What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Truth and Transparency. July 3rd, 2026, all day today, kicking off a wonderful July 4th weekend. This is the Idaho4. My name is Lana, and I'll be your host. Truth line exposed. Size affidavit clashes with size book. Is that accurate? Well, first, at some point, you're going to have a comment. Use the live chat section to make yourself known, chat with other chatters, or if you catch us on replay, use the comment section of the video. Let me know what you think. And then thumbs it up, thumbs it down. You will have your own opinion at some point while you're here or after you watch the video on replay. Make yourself known. Now, okay. Want to give a shout out to, if you guys go right here, you can go to Kaylee B. You can go on Substack. And this was back in December, right before the new year in 2025. She updated to give Cy Ray's testimony. She wanted it transcribed, so that's what she did. Kaylee B is usually in chat. If not, she's in the comments on the videos. So again, kudos. Go check her out on Substack. I took this piece so that everybody could understand where I was coming from with the statement. And I think the first thing that you need to ask yourself when it comes to Cy Ray is right here when Ann Taylor says, after she says, do you usually work with the defense? Cy Ray says, this is the first time I've ever testified for the defense. Fair to say you usually are a prosecution witness? That is a very fair statement. But here's the important question. Ann Taylor says, well, here you are, and you're working with us in Mr. Kohlberger's case. What's your role in this case? That's the question right there. What's your role in this case? And again, this was testimony from Cy Ray in May of 2024. Cy Ray then says, trying to conduct an analysis of all of the geolocation data. At this point, still focused primarily on Mr. Kohlberger's device, but ultimately all devices. But any geolocation data, which is the ability to look at a specific area, whatever range or size that may be at a specific time, and put some type of accuracy and reliability to a phone's travel. Maybe it's stagnant, when it's moving, when it's not moving, when it's off, it's on, those type of things. But specifically as it relates to network, so the cellular network or a Wi-Fi network. I am not a forensic digital guy. I don't get into cell extractions. I'm not looking at the metadata on the phone. I'm looking at it very much as a network. So again, what's your role in this case? Right here. May of 2024, that was Cy Ray's role. Give it up for Black Cat and Jam turning 10 people green and making them members. Thank you so much, Karen. So, again, what's your role in this case? It doesn't say anything but that. It's very important. Very important. What's your role in this case? Now, with that said, Chapter 1 of Cy's book, that's going to come up and play here in a little bit when I'm going to show you guys stuff from the affidavit that Cy wrote, okay? But behavioral fusion is what this book is all about. But in chapter 1 of Cy Ray's book on page 3, he says, this is not malicious, but it was not accidental. either. This case appeared strong while becoming fragile. Well, Mr. Ray, can you explain that statement to the viewers? Mr. Ray also said that I was defending the investigative process, not Brian Kohlberger. And I would say, well, you would agree your work would show that the FBI agents lied. Correct? You would agree that prior to your affidavit, the prosecution and FBI had this knowledge because they knew what they did and they knew that you knew what they did. Correct? Again, you're defending the investigative process, defending the integrity of it, defending the discipline, defending this process because it matters how we get to the end. So, Mr. Ray, did you ever think that maybe the prosecution decided to attempt to try to beat you at your own game? Force your hand. Do you think it's at all possible that they had Ashley Jennings type up that motion in limine just right after it was very clear that in the previous motion to suppress that Judge Hippler said that the stuff that y'all wanted to get into with the timing advance or going back and forth on like Nick Balance and all that stuff and other investigators, that was fodder for cross-examination. And that was actually the prosecution's point that they made and put on the record as well when it came to timing advance. So the next hearing, or I should say like the next opportunity where it would be a pretrial motion that would be placed would be the motion limine. And that's when Ashley Jennings comes out and she writes this little clip. And so do you think it all may be that they decided to beat you guys at your own game by forcing your hand out now? Meaning that they knew once Ashley put in the request in the motion limine for the timing advance that it would have boxed in you guys needing to make a move now. Would you kind of agree with that? That you would see it as, okay, we're going to jump on this now because we got them. And that move was your affidavit, correct? That's when your affidavit came in. Because you guys got to be thinking that, oh my God, they walked right into it. They're going to go ahead and try to do this now. That they're going to try to keep this out. The timing advance. And so you write this affidavit after their motion. When did you get that to Ann? When did Ann ask you to write that? I'm trying to get some dates down because I know a big part of the book here is saying that you never had that opportunity when you answered and you placed your affidavit in. That was to the first part of what Ashley Jennings was saying. Then they went ahead and they basically switched their argument. Or you could say that they added to it, which was different than what they originally had said. But I know your book is really big on that there was no colluding here. There's no bad actors. But my question is knowing that Hippler was going to blast you and your credit before the trial ever began, wouldn't you consider that colluding? Because why would Ashley Jennings ever put a motion limine in knowing that if anybody, okay, with a brain cell could tell exactly what they were trying to do here, is really putting themselves in a situation to, like, why would you want to go around outing yourself? Okay. So what I want to talk about colluding is wow, Ashley Jennings and the team of prosecutors, they come out and write what they write in motion limines, right? And going back and forth and totally, I mean, it's very obvious what they did, as your affidavit stated. But you got to have some type of like assurances that this judge is going to see it your way. Otherwise, this could ruin your career. You'd be done. So my question is knowing Hitler was going to, do you think that it's all possible that the prosecution knew that Hitler was going to blast you? So when Ashley Jennings put out what she first put out, and then you come back with what you did, and then they supplement it basically and start talking about the 7 days. And knowing that Hitler came back and basically blasted you and your credit, calling you a conspiracy theorist before trial ever began, would that be coordination? Wouldn't that be coordination? Or just luck that Hitler would protect Ashley Jennings, Nye, Josh Hurwitz, Bill, and all that knew the truth? I would think that you have to look at some level of coordination there. But your book doesn't answer the 7 days, does it? And if it does, could you point me there? How many different geofences were set up in this case? And then your book says that there was this November 29th official report from WSU. When were you provided that official report? And who wrote that official report? What day was it wrote on? Because they could have done actions on the 29th. But when was that report ever written? Because I asked for any report by Curtis Whitman assisting any other agency, which would be Moscow, Idaho State Police, Pullman, in relation to Brian Kohlberg case. And my filing came back during the time frame of 11/14 to 12/12. I went with incident reports as well. I went with so there was nothing there. So do you still have that report? Could I get a copy of that report? Can you put that out on Social Crime Club? Because the only thing that I have, and I just got it and I want to share it with you guys, is this. And it was just filled. I want you guys to take a look. We're going to go on over here to Hector. Hector always making it pop. And we're going to get a lot more into this on my double feature today, but okay. A couple things I want to point out is this is when the report was generated. And this report was just generated on 4/30/2026. Both of them, and you can see the one report is at 11:29 and another report is at 11:32. And this is because of my request. And my request stated the following. I am seeking all incident reports, supplemental reports that feature the name Detective Curtis Whitman between 11/14 and 12/12. Request number 2, I am seeking all incident reports, supplemental reports that feature the name Daniel Tanego for incidents that occurred between the same dates. Request number 3, I am seeking all reports that show what license plates were queried by Officer Daniel Tanego and Detective Curtis Whitman while on duty on 11/28/2022 and 11/29/2022. Please provide an itemized report for each separate queried plate and list the make, model, and year of that plate. The plate can be redacted if needed for privacy purposes. If these officers were using dash cam or body cam during any of these queried items on 1128 and 1129, please include those videos. Any radio activity that occurred or CAD notes that occurred during those same times of queried plates are being requested as well. Now, this is the first part that they were able to get back to me. They're still working on this. It's still open, but what WSU is doing is that they're taking they'll break up the request and break you off the pieces. Now, so I get this, and they gave me a body cam that actually had nothing to do, and it wasn't like it was body cam that was labeled wrong or anything like that. It was just, I believe, for a different requester. So this is the first part that they've gotten back to me. Okay. And what I want to show you guys is this is the Washington State University Police Department radio log summary report by day and time. So Officer Tanego was working the swing shift. He started his shift on 11/28. Okay, right around 4. So see, it's 16:54. But those swing shifts are, start sometime either between 4 and 6. But as you can see, he's starting here at 4:50. Well, I shouldn't say he's starting, but this is the first time that he's doing anything for what my request is, which is a plate number. Okay. And then you can see 17, 19, 20, 21, or 20, and then see how it goes then into 12, 28, and 44 seconds. Now, what I want you guys to notice here is the plate right here. That's Brian Kohlberger's Pennsylvania plate. Report includes all dates between this time and this time, like what I asked for, all dispatchers, all call numbers, all agencies making a WSU, all zones, all units matching 321, and then all the 10 code matching. And these are your 10 code matching. A 1028 and a 1029. And this is a vehicle registration check and check for stolen and warrants. So now, in order for you to be able to give dispatch, first we'll just start with 1028. I'll read these. This code requests information on the vehicle's registration. If confirms who owns it, the expiration date, and if the license plate matches the physical vehicle. 1029, check for stolen or warrants. This code asks dispatch to check if the vehicle itself is reported stolen or wanted in connection with a crime. Okay. Now, do you remember when I had Peggy Gunn on the channel? And she says, we had to go to them. They didn't come to us. And I said, wow, that's just so wild to me. Well, it's not wild to me anymore. It's not wild to me anymore. And now I know why Ann Taylor had Peggy Gunn on the witness list. There's a report out there that acts like Brian Kohlberger went to the DMV or BMV, whatever you guys call it, and did what he did on the 18th, but that he never got his plates. Okay. That's not true. He got his plates on the 18th. Okay. It's really, really important. He got his plates, new plates, on the 18th and put them on his car, but it's going to register that car now has these plates and it's registered in Washington. And that's going to be beginning on the 18th of November. So my question was, and this is why I didn't do this live last night. because I was waiting for confirmation back on something. And there's a couple things that we're still doing out there, but so this was my question. Is if Daniel Tanego was to call in, okay, a VIN number or a plate, and right here you could see that's the code. If you want to zoom in, I'll zoom us in. All 10 codes matching, and I just told you what it was. $12:28:44 on 11:29. This is AM. Okay? Because I said, how are you possibly asking someone, dispatch? That's why we're waiting. I don't have the radio yet. But remember they said we don't want you guys to use the radio? You don't want you guys to use the radio? Well, here, how could you possibly see this plate, right? See this plate if you're looking at cars and that plate wouldn't have been on that car anymore. Because here, 30 minutes later, right? Whitman gives this plate, comes back, to Washington. And I want you to see something. Whitman goes to work at 9, p.m. And so at 12:01, 12:02, 12:05, 12:11, 12:13, 12:19, 12:35, 12:53, and then 12:58 and 9 seconds. Okay. Whereas Tanego here, right? He ran a plate at 4:54, at 5 o'clock, at 7:40, at 8:38, at 8:39, and then all this time goes by, and then he runs one at 12:28, and the plate is the LFZ, and that's the Pennsylvania. Okay? Now, and when you're running a check, so when it went through, this is the code. And this means that you want dispatch. This code requests information on the vehicle's registration. Now, Curtis is at the time of that would have been the administrative sergeant. Okay. And so if you're requesting, this is going over, as you can see, this is from the CAD. This is what this person's doing. So my latest request is I want the location. I want to know where these officers were located when they were doing this. Where were they located? Because if you go off of the probable cause, right? And they talk about these queries. And it's like what they're told is the one thing about being a query is if I'm downloading all the information from and this is not who was asked to do this. These people were not asked to put databases together and to provide them with like the school passes and here's your Nero and here's your these are all the cars that are the an Elantra or there was like 7 or 8 different descriptions that they were going with. Those Excel spreadsheets, they were already being conducted and started on 11/19. Okay. And so this isn't that. So we at least I know I asked myself, why didn't 11/28 or 11/29, okay? Cyree over here is like saying that there's this official report on this day, but there's just not. I mean, this shit, usually when we get our request back, it's something that would have already been like generated. This report, I'm curious if Ann Taylor ever generated this report. Because what this report should be questioning everybody with is how in the hell could Officer Daniel Tanego have the license plate of a Pennsylvania plate that no longer is on the vehicle? Unless you had that plate number from before and you never knew that Brian Koberger changed his plates. Think about this. You're going to sit here and tell me that we believe that somebody handed Daniel Tanego with a spreadsheet and said, go and run these and see if any of these vehicles request information on the vehicle's registration, confirm who owns the car, the expiration date, and if the license plate matches the physical. If you're going off of the parking passes, it has the name of the freaking person. Okay. Then the 1029 type of a check is C for stolen and for warrants. This code asks dispatch to check if the vehicle itself is reported stolen or wanted in any connection with a crime. Okay. So ready for this? Now you mix in the Peggy Gunn stuff, which is why did they never go to the DMV? And when you get his name on December 19th, okay, they wanted to bury that. And I'm saying to myself, because it doesn't make any sense, you could have video of this man being at that location. And then I believe that when they saw that, holy shit, he changed his plates, and holy shit, how could somebody possibly query a plate that wouldn't have been on a car? Okay. How does Daniel Tanego drive around and see a car that has that plate on it when it didn't anymore? You can't. And Daniel Tanego didn't write up a report to say what he was doing. So ready. Okay. This is really important. When Peggy Gunn told us that they had to go to them, we got in contact with the police. And I'm like, what? That's like crazy. This is crazy that Peggy's and her boss would go to them. You guys, when they started pulling and looking into Brian Koberger on December 19th, and they're running all their NCLSI checks and all that crap, you would have seen that the dude just registered his vehicle on November 18th. You would have seen that. Okay. You would have seen that it's Washington. You would have seen that he transferred over from Pennsylvania to Washington. Okay, when that happened, oh, he just did this. Oh, he just had his birthday, blah, blah. You would have seen this. You would have went to where he did this. And there's, even if you don't know, you can eliminate, it's Pullman. Where could the places that he possibly could have gone to do this? And go in there and ask if you've, did somebody by the name Brian Colbert, can you look your records and see da-da-da? Why didn't they do this? Especially knowing that DMVs have fucking cameras. Okay? And we know that they did, we know what they knew by December 30th, right? Or 29th, rather, when they put it in the probable cause, because they mention that he's on November 18th that he switched over. But guess what? On December 29th, when they wrote that up, they hadn't visited any of those places. And in fact, if you go and check it out, there's a report that insinuates and infers that Brian Colbert didn't change, that he wasn't provided his plates right then and there, and that they were like mailed to him. And so when we have to ask ourselves, how could this possibly have slipped through the cracks? It didn't slip through the cracks. Somebody realized exactly what I realized when I looked at this and said, wait, how are you calling in this old plate? Okay. How are you calling this in? And now what their answer for it now was that is that Daniel Tanego was querying them, what I believe that they were going to try to say, but this is why Ann Taylor had them on her witness list, is we're going to get the radio on this. There has to be radio on this. Okay? Because who are you asking somebody to run so that you can understand what, if all the checks are there? Meaning if I'm calling, hey, I need you, I'm going to give you a plate. Can you, 1028, 1029, whatever, however you want to call it in, you give them this plate. There's no VIN numbers there. And the only way that you could have the VIN is if you're right on top of the car. And let's say that you did that, then that's even better for what I'm trying to prove, which is when you provided the VIN, you're going to sit here and try to say you provided the VIN and it came back as the PA plate that's been outstanding for 11 days. No. And then 30 minutes later, when you ran the VIN, it comes back the Washington plate. No, what this shows is that this person right here, let's say that I gave you a slip, just, how do we know that Curtis Whitman didn't give him a slip and say, hey, run these plates? And so Daniel Tanego goes and starts doing that, right? Think about this. Curtis Whitman tells Daniel Tanego, here's, because I was looking and paying attention. See how Curtis Whitman doesn't get to work until 9. And I'm double checking that again. This begins at, when he starts again at 12 o'clock, well, what would be the 12 o'clock hour, the new time, when it's 4 hours later? The first one that he does is this PA one. Now look at Curtis Whitman. He starts his at 12:01. So he starts his at the 12-hour block, okay? And then all of a sudden, so he does 12:01, 12:02, 12:05, 12:11, 12:13, 12:19, 12:35. So between 12:19 and 12:35, in between there, Tanego at 12:28 types in, and it's MDC. Which, here, let's actually just do it like that. See how some of these are like just, it has plate, boom, but then this MDC, MDC, plate, plate, MDC. And all of these are MDCs. Do you guys see the difference? So what is okay. On a police dispatch network, MDC stands for the mobile data computer. So when you're looking at, if you're in a vehicle, okay, mobile data computer. It's usually the laptop or tablet mounted inside a patrol car. It connects directly to the CAD, the computer aided dispatch. What it does, an MDC allows officers in the field to do several important things without needing to talk to a human dispatcher over the radio. Officers viewing incoming 911 calls get maps and directions and read notes about the location before arriving, run records. Officers can instantly look up license plates, driver's license, and check if a person has active warrants or a criminal history. Update status with a touch of a button. An officer can tell dispatch they are en route, on scene, or finished with a call. Secure messaging. Officers can send private text-based messages to other officers or other dispatchers. So you're going to tell me, okay, that means Curtis Whitman is in his vehicle. Daniel Tanego is in his vehicle. These are, nobody is at no motherfucking desk, okay, and querying from a desk inside the office, just like, hey, I'm looking this shit up. That's not what's happening. You got two officers that are in cruisers that are using their laptops, okay? And I want to know where Daniel Tanego got the license plate that was no longer on a motherfucking car. And why he just up and started doing this again in this blockage of time. Like, why do I believe that Curtis Whitman handed him a piece of paper? Okay, because think about this. Curtis Whitman, ready? That means Curtis Whitman had Brian Kohlberger's name and license plate from before, from when it was a PA. Curtis Whitman is the guy that left work on the night of the murders. So Curtis Whitman, because Daniel Tanego is not doing anything, he stops it. He starts doing whatever he's doing during this time. He stops them for 4 hours. Then Curtis Whitman starts this little shit here. See that? And he starts his at midnight. And then while he's doing this while he's doing this, Tanego somehow queries Brian Kohlberger's old plate. And nobody wrote up a report for this to say how this happened. There is no report. You could not be driving around and seeing a car that doesn't have this plate on it anymore. And then 30 minutes after that is when Curtis Whitman then is physically seeing Brian Kohlberger's vehicle and typing this in. But I want everybody to understand, this is not when Cy Ray came out in his book. So because I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later. But in the book, when Cy Ray is talking about that, there is an official report on November 29th. What are you talking about? Where is this official report? I can prove that now we know that, yes, over and using the mobile data computer, these two people queried 2 license plates that belong to Brian Kohlberger in a matter of 30 minutes. Okay. One of them is not on a vehicle anymore, though. And I went and checked. Remember I told you Dawn Daniels on November 21st? November 21st, Dawn Daniels provided everybody that was in the housing that stayed, that was in like the graduate housing, Steptoe. Brian's name was on that. And he said yes, that he was staying and that he was interested, send me a menu or whatever. But the list of these names was given to the police. But as you can see, like, it's not like his name was put in here, nothing. This was just cars. And so what I think is interesting is that what it seems like to me is that Brian Kohlberger's old license plate got passed along. And it's almost like they didn't know that he went and got his plates changed. But there's no report to say how Daniel Tanego came across and how are you looking up a plate number that is no longer on a car? Because the other thing is if you look at when he started doing this that day on the 28th, because he's working the swing shift, at 4:54 he queries 1. So what it would seem like is, see this one here? You're just there is no MDC here. So I believe that this is over the radio. Because see how there's like a case number almost? So I'm waiting for a couple of things to come back. But since there is nobody generated where is this report to say what you were doing and what you came across, and because it was like, if you're just driving around doing this with everything, you can't go ahead and say like, we had a lead. This isn't a fucking lead. This isn't a lead. This is, you were just like, so now, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to request another request and I'm going to ask for the same thing. And I'm going to extend these dates here. Okay. From 11/18, fuck it, 11/14 to 12/29. And we're going to see how many times there's looking up of plates. And I'm going to do it with the Pullman people because I find it hard to believe that one of the things that Daniel Tanego would be doing is what an administrative person in the FBI was already doing. So what I mean by that is that on 11/19, 11/20, the FBI is coordinating and they're being provided the databases that have here, these are all of our people that have parking passes. This is the make and models of the vehicles. Okay. So what do you want me to limit them down to? The make and models of which cars? Okay, then we can compact this. Okay, and this is the license plate that they provided on when filling out this parking pass. So you want me to believe that Daniel Tanego was provided this? Why would that be? Why would he be doing that while he is out patrolling WSU campus, who isn't supposed to be doing what? That's not what you're supposed to be doing. That was never. Payne just said, be out on the lookout when you see a car that's like, a white sedan that's a Elantra, right? Don't use the radio and do what? So where would Officer Daniel Tanego be provided these, here's the list. Wouldn't there be some instruction that, hey, I've already went through these 6 pages. Start, when you're at some downtime, to start running these and checking 1028, 1029, see if there's any, what? And for the record, these are not reports. Like Daniel Tanego nor Curtis Whitman wrote up a report. I just generated a report through CAD. I generated, and as you can see here, the first time that this was ever generated was through my request. And I requested this so long ago, but just look at how long it took them to go do this. 4/30/2026. I'm just curious if Ann Taylor did this. 4/30/2026, and they were just within minutes of each other because I did both of the people, Whitman and Tanego, and I wanted those 2 dates, and I wanted to see if they had typed in these license plates. And something that I just think is interesting is that Tanego typed in a license plate that was no longer on a vehicle. So how could you be, and he's in his mobile cruiser or whatever, so how could you be doing the job that was asked of you, which was if you happen to see a white Elantra, make note of it. Let us know. They were not supposed to be doing this. If this goes over the radio, this is absolutely not what they were supposed to be doing. But how could you be driving around in a cop cruiser at 12:28? And it was like, it was like Curtis Whitman just had like talked to him and said, here, do these. Because Curtis Whitman didn't want it to be the person I believe to like punch that in. And then Curtis Whitman is just driving around, right? And then he types in this. So you had 1 vehicle, 1, 2, 3 vehicles that he would have typed in to before then getting to that. And so their narrative is that Daniel Tanego wasn't out driving around. And that we never knew how he did this query, but I printed out because I wanted to see how he did his query. And his query is saying that he is in his cruiser. And so now I want to go and see, I want the GPS location data on this cruiser at 12:28 in 35 seconds. I want to know where his car was. And they're GPSed. So where was his cruiser at 12:28 in 35 seconds? Now remember, again, this is why I find this very, very strange. They started looking up all these vehicles that were back in the WSU installments of when they gave us all this crap, you go through the emails and you can start pinning down the dates that they started, hey, talking to Pullman, talking to WSU to get the databases of the parking permits, of the tickets. Okay, they wanted to know people that were getting tickets, the same that they were doing over there in Idaho. And so I had to think to myself is, if you're able to look up, so when you saw the name Brian Kober and you have the plate or whatever, well, let's see who recently ran him, right? Can't you do that? Can't you see when his shit was recently ran? But again, I thought what was supposed to happen here is that they were supposed to just write down these plates, okay, and give the information to who? To create a database to turn the information over to who? That's not what they did here at all. They did not do what they were asked to do. And then I just think that you would have known immediately. And so when we hear something like Officer Payne testifying and saying, oh, on 12/20, like, you're making it seem like to the judge that you got the lead of Brian Kober because of this. Because of this. What is this? What is this? You weren't following him around. You didn't do anything on 11, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, nothing. 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing. But really, what is this? I'm saying I cannot rule out that this is what I think it is. You gave Daniel Tanego this license plate, meaning Curtis Whitman. He ran this plate. Okay. What would have happened when this plate would have been run? Wouldn't it have said that this plate is no longer like, and that's why we need the radio. And they'll be like, no, there's nothing. There's no radio. There's no radio. So he just manually typed in this fucking plate number that is not on a vehicle anymore. And then it wouldn't, this dude wouldn't be like, when he ran it, hey, this car doesn't have this plate on it anymore. And so therefore that's why I believe that Daniel Tanego then or Curtis Whitman got sent out there, right? If you ran this, what is it going to tell you? This plate is, what would have come back for Daniel Tanego? He would have seen that is not the plate on that car. So what is it doing? It's your vehicle registration check. This code requests information on the vehicle's registration. It confirms who owns the car, the expiration date, and if the license plate matches the physical vehicle. And so you would have to go ask a cop, if you were to run a plate that was no longer my plate, what would it say? And so where's that report? Because that would be a car that would stick out to you. That, oh, wow, just right after the murders, a car switched its plate. But that's not what they did. But it's interesting that then Curtis Whitman goes, and now he's over by Brian's vehicle, because the only way that you could get this plate number, the new one, is if you're actually physically, buy it. And then I said, wait, actually, that's not true. Because wouldn't Daniel Tanego, by doing this, it would have come back that he now has this plate? And so he's talking to Curtis Whitman to say, that dude doesn't have that plate anymore. It's this. And so then he just runs it. But there's no report. Like this, I generated this. I generated to say I want to see every plate that these two people ran while they were working on 11/28 and 11/29. And this is all that it generated for each person. This is Curtis Whitman's. These are the only plates that he ran. And then if you look, these belong with case numbers. And this is like at 542, 544, 554, like something happened like that's, but do you notice how his stopped? Curtis Whitman did not run another plate after Brian Kohlberger's name. They knew what they were doing. Also, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross-reference all of the Excel spreadsheets that we have. And I want to see this little batch here of how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. See how they have like a call ID into them? So it's just 1, 2. So basically, if you take that away for Tanego, the first one that he actually did was Brian Kohlberger. I'm trying to I hope I'm doing a good job explaining this. So see how it has a call like right here? This is associated with something else. Associated with something else. And then this is in the midst of that. So it seems like it would just be something that's, again, but right here is where he starts it, which makes sense because of Curtis Whitman starts doing this. He runs a bit like that. And then everything else, see, none of those have. And then all this time, what's it? Curtis Whitman, the last one that he does, he stops right on Brian Kohlberger. So you're going to sit here and tell me that nobody can see what this fucking looks like? I know what it looks like. In a jury, you could you want to talk about narrative spins? Really? You know what a narrative spin you could put on this? And Curtis Whitman is the same guy that left work the night of the murders and is just claiming that it left at 4:30, which we're going to get into how we can prove. Okay, let's get some cameras. What was Curtis Whitman driving? What cruiser vehicle was he in? When was that last call? Went in route, blah, 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 all this shit, right? I'm just, all I keep doing is requesting all these different, we're going step by step to just, because guess what? We don't have drift here. And guess what? There's no urgency for time here. We're going to kick this all out because what they're trying to say that they did, what they're trying to say they did, they didn't. And I believe there's a way to prove it. And I think this is a pretty good start. And look at this report was generated on 4:30. I didn't get this fucking in my to me, which I believe that they had to at that point, until July 1st of 2026. They held us all of May and June. And so I think what they started to do here is we're going to start just releasing, even if it's just partial. Because I think somebody wrote in and said that. And so that's how I kind of ended up with that wrong body cam. But this is, and just so we're clear, everything that I requested, if this was the last thing, or if they went ahead and looked and there was nothing more, they would have said that the other stuff that you're asking for doesn't exist. And that's not what they said. They said that this request remains open because there's still stuff that we have to get to you. So these reports were generated 3 minutes apart, and it was because of my request. And I think that they were just going to send me everything at once. Okay. And then they're being cautious of this whole getting stuff back to people within the allotted time. And so that's why then I got this on a 2 months, but this was done. I just think that the reason that they were waiting is so they were going to give me everything at once. And then they're basically just doing partials now to get stuff out. But when you can eliminate and you can look and you can see that, wow, you're going to tell me that Tanego, the first car that he ran and the only car that he ran that day that wasn't associated, okay, with something that he was actually doing for work. Oh, wow, it's Brian Kohlberger's car. Come suck on mama's titties, baby. You're fucking crazy. And when you would show this to a jury and for them to be like, uh-huh, is that right? And you're typing in an old ass plate that would not be on a car that you could not possibly see when someone was driving. Where'd you get this plate, Tanego? Curtis Whitman? Because I think so. And I think Curtis Whitman had no idea that Brian Kohlberger changed his motherfucking plate. And then when it came back, I believe that Tanego, when he got this, he's like, oh, dude, oh my God, check this out. So at 12:28 and 48 seconds, right? Told Curtis Whitman about it and was like, wait, what? And then saw the address, and then Curtis Whitman drove there. Okay. Who knows? Maybe he didn't even drive there. But then he types in that new plate. Because Tanego hits him up afterwards. And so now we're going to get into phone records. And so we're going to see what calls Daniel Tanego made after 12:28 and 41 seconds. And I'm telling you, if Ann Taylor didn't do all this, like, if you believe your client's innocent, right? And all I'm trying to show is that if WSU, I mean, how'd you have that old plate number? It seems like you had that old plate number from when? If Ann Taylor, though, has a team like Jill Bolton had, then you're only as good as the people that are researching for you, because the evidence is what you need. Okay. So now you guys can see my chicken scratch here. So this is what got us on that. Okay, so in Cy's book, he talks about reports, because he's also talking about how things need to be independently verified. Okay. And so on page 7, the last paragraph, talking about independently verified. When reports are reviewed and signed off by a peer, like Pullman does, WSU does, Moscow does, is that just a check for spelling errors? And that's a haha funny joke, because every single one of these reports was signed off on, right? And so you're looking at this report and you should be like, what is this? What is this? What is this telling me? But every single person like signed off on that report being exactly how it was. In Cy's book, he's saying that all the reports are out there. No. On page 8 and page 9, no documentation in BK's case, because it's all with the feds. And my favorite, so far if you're reading the book, my favorite page that you're going to come across is page 9. And it begins to talk about a timeline. A timeline is a governance tool, according to Cyray, and it's not an explanation, but it places things in sequence. And then my question would be, is Cyray, humans do that, right? Humans, on page 9, anything to do with the timeline, humans do that, right, though? Or nowadays, AI, a software. And then what's the timeline's role? This is what Cyray is saying. And a timeline's role is to organize, not explain. And here's me, exactly. But who checks that timeline? Because in none of these reports is anybody generating a timeline. And there's been 300 and however many reports that Moscow did in this case, nobody generated a timeline. And so an example would be, for me, is to show, first of all, a human generates a timeline and it's supposed to put things in sequence. Well, how can you possibly mess that up, right? Because Ethan's Explorer logs, for example, when you put things purposely out of order, then something could stand to continue on as like, I mean, how do you not know that 926 comes after 932? I mean, before it. Come on. How does somebody not catch that? How could you say that that's not purposeful? It is. So, as you guys know, I love timelines. And so Cyree talks about, because there's two different types of a timeline. And the first one is an investigative timeline. And then the second one is the crime timeline. So in this case, and in all cases, investigative timeline, what is that? Well, an investigative timeline reflects when information becomes known and recorded, according to Cyree, not just known to an officer or the investigators or, the command center. It's and recorded, because that's the only way that we can know, right? And you need to do this so that you can investigate correctly. So again, what is the investigative timeline? Well, this reflects the timeline of when information becomes known and recorded to investigators. When did you know that? When did you know this? When did you determine everybody was home by 2? How did you determine what time Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, and the surviving? What was there that told you that? So, and then there's the crime timeline, which reflects when behavior actually occurred. And we're going to come back to that one. So the first time that you really get to talk about pattern of life in the truth line is on page 10. And basically, the moral of this story is, before we're going to come back to this, is the book is called The Truth Line for a reason. And you basically are going to you could take a whiteboard, you could take a piece of paper, and what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line right down the middle. And for example, here is where your possibilities, your theories, your ideas, okay, or what you're trying to figure out. So arrival time home for the victims. You're putting what you think over here. So let's say we put Ethan and we put Xana's name. Okay, we put Kaylee's and we put Maddie's, and then we put Bethany's and we put Dylan's. You're not putting anything over here until it is reliable, credible, tested material. Something that you are going to stand on at trial. And as you can see out of the example, that this is my example, because this is how I would ask. This is the only thing I would ask Cyree is the arrival time home of the victims. How was that determined in this investigation? But then did you guys go ahead and do that in the investigation that you would have performed? Being on the defense, you would have started from the beginning and looked at obviously it doesn't take a genius. You just look at a couple of those slips when the police are going back and forth and talking about that they want more information surrounding Xana and Ethan's whereabouts between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. Why? Also, like your theories, your ideas, your possibilities. So let's say that I want to say that, how does that Explorer get in the driveway? There is not a single person that was interviewed that said, or that was asked about that Explorer that we've come across. Now, my next question would be is why is Brian Kohlberger's case in this book? Well, page 12. Because this case is the example. Because it contains every failure this discipline exists to prevent, his discipline. So the methodologies that sides like, listen, if you do things like this, what happened in the Brian Kohlberger case would never happen again. And my question would be, you also say that do not mistake this for a failure of character. The people inside this system are not the problem. The system is. Let's go back to you saying that the Brian Kohlberger case is the example. It's not just an example. It is the example because it contains every failure that this discipline exists to prevent. He says, do not mistake this, though, for a failure of character. The people inside this system are not the problem. The system is. Well, the previous paragraph just said, because it contains every failure. So your discipline does not include the failures of human failure? These would be my questions for Sai. Is that, and so if your book addresses every failure that existed and it's designed to prevent with your discipline, does your discipline not include, it doesn't address the human failures? Which would be the character potentially of humans, right? Or is it that because your discipline, nor any discipline, can prevent the human character failures? And that's the $1 million question right there. And this is like you cannot possibly answer this without me saying, aha, like no discipline, no methodology can change, right? Can fix if there's character failures. That's where corruption comes from. And so when I went back, because this is how I was doing my notes, and that's why I changed a couple of things, it's because this discipline, when he says, because this case is the example, because it contains every failure this discipline exists to prevent. And that is because your discipline, nor any discipline, can ever prevent the human character failure. Right? The human character failure was present in this case. But your discipline, just like anybody else's, how do you prevent corruption? And if you think that, hey, this would prevent it, because you want to move away from, he doesn't think there was corruption here. And I don't care if you think that there was. I'm asking you a question, though. There is corruption. We know that there's corruption because the Innocence Project exists because of it. So is there a discipline out there that could even address that failure, that could prevent that? Because I believe something that I've talked about could prevent that. Putting a public defender's office involved in a murder case that's high stakes. This book is about high stakes case. This is not about going and doing a bike, that's been stolen. This is a high stakes pressure book that's talking about that. Like, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about bikes. We're not talking about noise complaints. We're not talking about somebody took Fluffy. So if we can get prosecutors in right away, why can't we get defense attorneys in right away? Because you're eventually going to have a defendant, right? Just like you're eventually going to have to prosecute the case, right? So you want to talk about the scales of justice. Why wouldn't it be even? Because listen, We, the people, should be demanding that, because we, the people, are going to be potentially that defendant. You know, there's no alien that's coming and going to ever be in that chair. So a discipline that does not prevent or have a way to prevent human failures because of characters, because if that's what his book says here, do not mistake this for a failure of character. The people inside the system are not the problem. Huh? I disagree. The system is. Now, think about this. I believe that in order to have validation, which is part of anybody's discipline, validation comes from humans doing something. So again, if I was talking to Sai, well, but doesn't it though? Like, human character failures need to be a part of this. If something has to be validated, it requires sources, reviews, okay, of evidence that speak for the human interpretation, aka the context narrative. That's all coming from humans. That's the whole looking away. Human error is one thing. Error is not character. Mistakes is not character. Character failure, that's different than a mistake and an error. I said, well, every report had someone sign off on it. So is that just for grammatical errors, or to really read and check the work of another officer? In this case, the PCA had so many eyes on it for 48 hours. Corrections were made, deletions, add-ins, blah, blah, blah. That, to me, the probable cause is like a report. And it's basically a report because Payne made it a report because it's part of what he wrote up in one of his reports. And so since the PCA was a report, somebody signed off on that. But can you believe that his report did not get written up until in January, after the arrest of Brian Kohlberger? We watched the episode. This person, go watch the episode. We watched Brian Kohlberger walk out with plates in his hand. That's why they did not want to show that video ever, not once. That's why they did not go and do anything, because they knew that he was in possession of those plates. But it really then blew up Daniel Tanego's shit that they did. And so a new narrative was born. Digital evidence is the new DNA of the 80s. Would you agree, Mr. Ray? Absolutely, I think you would say yes, because that's what his book pretty much says. So why does the Innocence Project exist? Because basically my point is that the Innocence Project exists, right? Because DNA came along, and people that confessed to crimes, DNA exonerated them after they confessed. Why? Because they took a plea deal because they didn't want to spend the rest of their life in prison. And it was like, I'm fucked. How fucked do I want to be? So why does the Innocence Project exist? And part of that reason, though, besides just the that DNA came along and, was able to exonerate people, right? But also, isn't it because of bad actors? Because you're not going to sit here and tell me that people didn't railroad black men, because that's what they did. And those are bad actors who are racist pieces of shit. And so was it a failed system? Was it a bad actor? You know that you don't have the evidence. So let's pound on these people. Let's create evidence where there isn't evidence. I personally believe that the Innocence Project would never have the caseloads that they do. Okay. If cops didn't lie and manipulate and get people to false confess or take plea deals because they saw no other choice. Is that a human choice to behave that way? Knowing as a cop or a prosecutor, you don't have dick, but I can go ahead and do this. And so I'm saying, is that a failed system? Is, new technology with the DNA? That's the 80s. Now where we're at here, now it's basically the digital era, And so we're catching this new wave because the digital era is catching people being scumbags, right? Look at what Proctor is caught in, right? The digital world caught that. Okay. And so you can honestly sit here and say, in this case, there aren't bad actors. Because this is the case that you're saying is the case for the truth line for behavioral fusion. This is that case. And I'm saying that's not. I'm saying I believe in your methodology and I love it. But to say that the Kohlberger case is the case, I disagree. Because it's corruption. And that doesn't mean that Brian Kohlberger is innocent. But this didn't happen because of a broken system. This happened because of bad actors. And I'm not just saying that because I think that. I'm saying that because I went out and got the fucking material to prove it. Common Sense got out 5 Truth and Transparency memberships. Thank you so much. Black Hat and Jam, $1,999.99 for any FOIA you need for your extraordinary hard grind. Yes, we like the good grinds. And for your love and passion you showed to all of us and the fighting spirit of the innocent and through. Hearts, strongs, hearts. Thanks so much, Karen. We love you. Appreciate you. Blue-eyed butterfly. Lana, with all these truths coming out, can we really make a difference? Why hasn't anything even changed yet with all of this out? Well, I'll tell you why. For example, Sheldon Jeter Jr., it's 2026. Okay, he should be getting a new trial. His injustice was way worse than Alec Murdaugh. I should say way worse, was just as egregious, right? A juror was the neighbor of Rachel Del Tondo, asked for full immunity, got it, testified, brought her dad in on the case, brought her estranged husband's dad on the case, prayed on it, did all these things that you're not supposed to do while jury deliberating. And she testified to it and said that this is what she did. That's grounds for an automatic, that is juror misconduct. And that gets you a new trial. Sheldon was denied. And so Sheldon's been sitting, but you know how long it took us to just get to that point? Because there's racist judges in Beaver, and Judge Kim Tesla keeps on denying things, keeps on ruling ridiculously. Then you have to go up and you have to get him to be overturned, which we've done. But long story short, this stuff takes so much time because of the fucking court system. And Sheldon's he was in jail since 2020. Then he was he went and had a trial in about a year for first-degree murder. His lawyers filed maybe 4 motions, if that. Did not ask for a single one supplemental discovery request. Did not put motions in limine. Did not do voir dire. Did not ask people if they knew who Rachel Del Tondo was. It was just disgusting. But anyways, here we are, 2026, and we haven't even gotten to his first written post-conviction relief request. 2026. So, damn, this shit is insane as fuck. I don't know whether to feel vindicated, energized, or depressed. Feel all of it. Have a shot. It's the holidays. 250 years, America, baby. Woohoo! We are truly existing in a living hell. Lord help us all. Well, these are human. This is humans. This is humans. If you guys didn't check the beginning of the video out, again, give a shout out. I don't know if Kaylee B is here. Kaylee B has a Substack. I read the one part that I wanted to read on the Substack, which was asking, it was Cyray's when he was on the stand in 2024, and Ann Taylor says, what was your role in this case of May of 2024? And Cyray's role was trying to conduct an analysis of all of the geolocation data. At this point, still focused primarily on Mr. Kohlberger's device, but ultimately all devices. But any geolocation data. He never talks once about anything else. So my question would be well, can we expand on that? You need context surrounding stuff, right? If you did the geolocation data of the devices, can you tell us what devices you worked on? And what devices you worked up timelines? And when you're talking about pattern of life, your book says that you need to do that and you need to have 180 days. You guys didn't even have 180 days worth of data on those devices. You didn't even get into Kaylee's device. Kaylee's device, well, that wasn't, what could you generate from Kaylee's device though? Because it wasn't gotten into. How does that affect you? And so, like, what about Bethany, Dylan? Now, if you're doing geolocation data on all the devices, did somebody generate a report that you looked at to see, did they generate something like that on the opposite side? Because they're saying that they could never place Brian Kohlberger and anybody together ever at the same time. Or what's your take on that? Lori, remember for 6 months. Thank you for all your hard work, Lana. Happy 4th. Happy 4th to you too. Freebird forever. Gifted 5 Truth and Transparency memberships. Bombs away. William Tardy spraying the chat. What's up, William? Black Hat and Jam turns another 10 people. Karen, you're a freaking awesome cat. Thank you so much, Karen. Is it Katie Mahoney? Thank you so much. Murky, what do you got for me, Murky? Happy 4th, Murky. Hopefully you're doing well. Repeated mistakes and prove someone doing same thing and not changing ways is a character flaw. Yeah, it's a fucking big time character flaw. And we're about to get into that right now, which is, how could you sit here and say that them filling out in repeated motion, right? Changing their arguments, moving things around, it made you write an affidavit a certain way, right? That isn't a systematic failure. They chose to write that motion the way they did. They chose to, follow it up the way that they did. Idaho Drake case and then the Kohlberger case, and you know how many others. Exactly. And so that gives you no confidence in whatever their shit's going to produce. Yeah. Well said there, Murky. Yeah. And that's how I feel about this case. The way that it was handled is the same way that I feel about the Karen Reed case. And that's why no matter who would ever sit in that defendant's chair, they're going to be found, if I was a juror, not guilty because of reasonable doubt. There is so much reasonable doubt in this case. And then one should ask yourself, as it says all the time, well, then why would you ever, plead guilty? I don't know, because I'm not that person. I can only tell you that if I was a juror, what I see and what I would then determine, like, here you go. Not all this inadmissible bullshit that mainstream media went around because of these fucktards doing this shit. The admissible evidence, and not inflamed and not sensationalized. You guys, there's so much reasonable doubt. Just like the Karen Reed case. And it comes because of the investigation is so fucking fucked. Nobody's writing reports. It's crazy. It's crazy. So moving on then, Mr. Ray, in our review here, the Brian Kohlberger case is what the digital shift looks like when nothing holds it back. That comes around page 12 of your book, which, by the way, here it is. It's beautiful. Did you guys like my thumbnail? That Cy is a handsome senior. He won prom king. Okay. You back off. That's Carrie's man. We had to go digging in the cut. We found that. I hope he gets to see that. It's pretty funny. He's a good-looking dude. He won prom king. So, but on page 12 of the book focuses on process, not people. Because the book is all about respect, which I agree. Okay. So this book is about the process. It's not about the people. He goes in a lot of different parts in here to really emphasize that. Well, was Brian Kohlberger, so this is a tough question. This is where a hardball question would come in. So, Cy, I got to ask you, Brian Kohlberger, was he given that same respect in this book? Is in terms of going with the process and not with the people? This whole Route B thing. That in of itself deserves its own live broadcast, Route B. Because I got to ask you how you can say that is not speculation. Especially if you're going with the reports that were provided, which Moscow basically, like I said, they didn't report shit. But by God, you can eliminate Route B because you can eliminate that 326 vehicle is not. There is no way to say that that's Brian Kohlberger's vehicle. And in fact, it's really highly. So here, this is what we'll do. Okay. We'll give you a little sample of my B. Okay. So, was Brian Kohlberger given that same respect? With the book focuses on the process, not the people. So, it does not speculate beyond the record, says page 12. I'm just taking it right. It does not speculate beyond the record. Okay. So, well, weren't you and Ann and others pointing out the huge material falsehoods of the fact within the PCA through the Franks? So do you think Bill, Ashley, and law enforcement read your Franks filing? Did any one person come forward and attempt to correct an error or a mistake? Any reports like that? I just collected the footage and put it in evidence. Those are the type of reports I see. I just collected the phones. I just did this, blah, blah. I never looked at anything. I didn't know if something was missing. I just collected. I didn't do shit. Nobody wanted to say they did anything in this case when you guys had them on the stand. Where is there a MPD report, specifically a Maori report, where he makes a data interpretation or even claim or a timeline? You know, when Ethan got home and sourced it, when Xana got home, sourced it. Where are there any Maori claims in a report? Any phone, I can't see that far. Any phone connected to any device, a Bluetooth device, you know, example, to play music, because people were talking about that there was music being played. Is there any report from the Moscow Police Department where there's any interpretation of the data? And the answer is no, because I went through all of them. But I take that back. Maybe one report where it talks about what apps were on Brian Kohlberger's phone, and that how then they listed them all out and went ahead and was saying that they're going to have to, you know, put in the search warrants for the third parties. So how can Detective Maori testify? I mean, he was labeled as going to be an expert in this case, right? And then he was going to testify to 7 devices, but he had no what do these devices? How do you know what he's going to say or claim? Because that's why the other side usually gets an expert, because they're combating the findings or the interpretation of it. You know what I mean? Like, it could also mean this, or he's doing this wrong, or whatever. So who testified at the grand jury to examining the records? I like that. I'm just curious. You know, we don't know anything about the grand jury. We would have learned a lot more had there been a trial. But who testified at the grand jury, law enforcement wise, right, to examining the records, the material, to then make the claims of what they said, right? Think about this. Why did they have to use Bethany and Dylan? This is absolutely unheard of. In a grand jury, you're allowed to testify to hearsay. Why are you needing to use Bethany and Dylan? Was there officers that were like, hell no, I'm not fucking testifying because I know that I know that the shit's different. You want to get them up there to testify, go right ahead. Sai says the intent of this book is not criticism for its own sake, but prevention. And I can get down with that, but well, don't we all need to prevent ourselves from bad actors? Page 13, last paragraph. Again, this is a hardball question. On page 13, last paragraph, let's see. Maybe it's actually page 14. Well, oh, it's 1.5. Sorry. Okay. This book is intentionally disciplined. It deals with structure, constraint, failure, and accountability in environments where the stakes are high and the margin for error is small. Investigations are conducted by people. People bring experience, fatigue, institution, humor, frustration, and bias with them into the room. Pretending otherwise does not make investigations more objective. It just makes those influences harder to see. You say that the officers walked a razor's edge in this investigation. So let's see. On the surface, the plea may look like a procedural win, but it is not. This investigation reveals structural failures that matter far beyond outcome. The razor's edge walked by investigators and prosecutors was not inevitable. It was not acceptable. It was the product of choices made inside a system with no enforceable discipline. This level of risk was avoidable. Let's just call a spade a spade. That is the most passive aggressive sentence or paragraph I've ever read in my entire life. Yes or no, Sai? If you're saying something is not acceptable, and you're talking about the people that did it inside the system, then why aren't you going there? I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. So let's go back to when investigators knew what? The investigative timeline. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but Moscow Police Department report number 10 on 11/15/2022, Jacob Tisdall claims that he is this white sedan that's circling around. He's basically claiming SV1. He also puts himself at the Banfield stop until 3:32 a.m. Are you aware of that? Have you read that report? Which, that's a known falsehood. So on 11/15, after reviewing his material, his body cam, which he says he used the radio, his radio to dock the times. Nowhere in his radio does 3:32 ever come up with anything. But these are known falsehoods. A person did this. His name is Jacob Tisdall. He did it on 11/15/2022. Because Jacob Tisdall is actually finished from that Banfield incident at 3:16, and then he drives away in a vehicle at 3:19. The Linda Lane dumpster cams can prove that. And if you actually look at his body worn camera, it can prove that. It can like sync up. How would Jacob Tisdall know that he needs to lie and hide his whereabouts from 3:19 to 3:32 a.m. as early as 11/15/2022? And why this is important is because you talk about the fact that you believe that Brian Kohlberger could have traveled a route B, which is coming in from the east way to be on Indian Hills at 3:26. That would be in between where he's trying to say that he's somewhere till 3:32. Why? Well, because this makes it so that I'm not possibly that car that's at 3:26 over there on Indian Hills trails. But when you actually realize that Jacob Tisdall left at 3:19, and where were they? They were right over there. Why? Well, because they were watching and following the kid that took the sign from Sunset Mart. Sunset Mart is the 1330 cam, motherfuckers. So are you like, my question is, are you aware of this? Are you aware that somebody lied in a report as early as 11:15 about this timestamp to make it so that it would appear as that 326 car? Well, it can't possibly be us because we were still at the Banfield at 3 until 3:32. There's more. On the 1112 cam, we did a spreadsheet. Me and Mark actually stayed up all night. I was typing it up and he was relaying the information, and we came up with this spreadsheet. It's money. And what it does is it creates, and I'm sure you guys did this too, like with your guys' investigation into the case. We have every vehicle that came in and is on that camera. All the movements between 12:55 and 12 noon. No vehicle makes the moves described by Jacob Tisdall in his report about loops except for SV1. He can't be any other car for what he claims. And no car performs a loop right before the Banfield stop as he remembers it as doing, to witness a gray car that is, a dark vehicle that's parked and several people approaching to go into the King Road 112 house. Jacob Tisdall was in the White's apartment complex in his Ford Fusion with Nate Rosendahl when the body-worn camera is turned on, and that begins to start at like 251, 250, 252, 253, and then it, continues, proving where they were at prior to the Banfield stop. That he writes, as remembering that I was after making a loop. There is no loop that is even made 15 minutes before that, 20, 30, 40, 50. There is no loop. The only loops come later. Are you aware that Jacob Tisdall and Nate Rosendahl were working an overtime shift through a PSF grant the night of the murder? They sign up for 4-hour slots when they aren't on the schedule to perform quote unquote party patrols and drug activities. I did a public request, a lot of them, but very recently I did a public request to MPD and to then Idaho drug policy separately. Did not tell, obviously, they didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Asking for all of these records from 2019 to 2025 as far as this grant goes. Because this grant employed what was going on right outside that house that night. MPD withheld two documents from an audit, from an already audited file that would have been, boom, here it is. You just take it out, copy it, send it on its way. Somebody physically went through that and took out sheets. Very specifically to, I paid $433, and well, actually this community also helped. $433 for this one request that they wanted $2,300 for because they're trying to prevent the information from coming out. These 2 pages had the 11/12/2022 results of the party patrol as one of the documents, and the other document was the log of the hours. Jacob Tisdall said he concluded his shift on his report at 3:52 a.m. Funny. He wrote that he worked from 9 until 5 on the log sheet that went to Idaho drug policy. 9 to 5. And the form also showed that Nate Rosendahl was not listed on the 11/12/2022 Party Patrol log. This PSF grant pays officers time and a half plus a percentage of its benefits. You sign up in advance on a log shared, or a log sheet that shows 4-hour time slots. Like when you're signing up, it's just for 4 hours. And they have it all this way because they're giving all of the people that are allowed this is a way for you to make overtime money. Okay. Not one person can just hog all the overtime money and make a ridiculous amount of money. It's spread out throughout it. So because it's supplementary income. Were you guys aware of any of this when you guys were doing this investigation with Brian Culver's case? Because Ann Taylor is going after the fleets that were being driven at that time, people's personal vehicles. These were type of the discovery requests that Ann Taylor were doing. Do you have any personal knowledge about this while you were working with Ann Taylor? $9 p.m. to 5 a.m. is double the time slot that was allotted for Jacob Tisdall to technically work. Okay. I mean, also, if you examine the log entries, this Excel entry from 11/12/2022, this form has been manipulated after things have already been entered. There was entries that were made that were already present in the log, and there was 4 or 5 more names that night that were listed below Jacob Tisdall, and they were later manually deleted, as was, Nate Rosendahl was one of them, and I think that was by accident. Nate Rosendahl, his name was one of them, and again, I believe that was accidental. But they went up that far because they just took them off. But you can tell all of this because it deleted the formulas. Something was typed in. Why are you typing in all of these things? If you go through the entire list of logs throughout every year that they've had this since 2019, this is not present on any of them. There is nobody that ever made a mistake and had to go back and like delete things, and that's what it looked like. Never once. There's also no log that ever showed people that worked this type of a crazy shift from 9 to 5 in the morning. It's absurd. And then you mix that with what Curtis Whitman did on 11/12 going to 11/13, and he left work early during the time of the crime, potentially, or during the cleanup time. We don't know exactly when he left, but he says that he left at 4:30. But the reason that he says he left is about a football game. Yeah, no. And now I'm starting to think about the fact that, and you know what time that football game was at, right? That was at noon. He didn't work the football game. I don't know. Did Ann Taylor try to figure out what type of vehicle Curtis Whitman has that he would have been leaving up out potentially? Also, were you aware that 4 underage parties were broken up that night? 4 people were cited. Who were these people? Did you guys ever figure that out? Was that even, I mean, I'm sure that you were trying to figure something out when the 4 people at Banfield said that they were underage. And they said that they came from a kid named Matt's house. Did you guys ever know who that Matt person was? Now, use the comment section, send it all out there. Here's the logs. We're going to talk about it in a follow-up video, but I want to keep all of these separate. Get a good pic, go back, get a good screenshot. I also put these. This is Tanego's. And then this is Whitman's. And then I want to close out with, in the comment section, Kaylee B, this is why I went and did her what do you call it? Her Substack. She's been freaking out over all the Cy stuff. Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, you wrote all this shit in your affidavit, right? And it was a lot that he did write, right? We can question whoever we want. Oh, and I do. If you want to ask me if I think I'm pretty smart, I do. I do think I'm pretty intelligent, but thank you. And I'll ask anybody questions. Chastising. That's the word you want to use. I don't think I've heard that word since Catholic grade school, but go put on your chastity belt, girl, boy. But yeah, thanks. When you can actually feel confident to ask the questions that I'm asking, okay, because you know the material, this is your background in school, I'm pretty confident. It's not that hard to ask a question when you write a sentence in a book that's completely opposite of what you wrote in an affidavit. So then you would just ask the question, which is, why did you write that in your affidavit? And then here in the book, you're saying that it wasn't people, it was a system, because that's not what the affidavit said at all. Right? Right. So let me see if I can find this because I want to give props, and I thought I pinned it. What's her name? Kaylee wrote, Kaylee B. Kaylee B, are you even in here? Maybe she'll see it on replay. I think it was a comment to, you know what? Maybe I can listen to it. I already commented on it. I thought maybe I could find it if it was in the comments of my notifications. Mentions comments. Let's just do comments. God, this could take a minute. Basically, she goes, Kaylee B says, you know, because she copy, cut, and paste basically the portion of Cyre's affidavit. And she says, you know, so is Cy lying now or was he lying then? Okay. And that's that's a question. That's my question. And I'm curious how, okay, wait, here we go. Maybe it's in here. Okay, hold on. I think I found it. Trust me, nobody wants to ask Cy that, but here it is. Here's Kaylee B. 22 hours ago. I'm so disgusted with Cy. If Brian's car drove to Moscow that night, the FBI would have found the damn videos. Instead, they had to piece together vehicles they knew weren't Brian's. At 45:27 of my video, she's like, wait, he said the crime scene was processed pristine? Yes, he did in his book. Lana, are you serious? Number one, they not only ignored the entire first floor, they used it as a staging area. That's what I've been saying. I couldn't agree more. 1000%. You have no idea how somebody got in and got out, and you just are all over and just standing right where you are. What the fuck are you doing? I think that was by design. There was no quote unquote no real search leading away from the house for blood trails, shoe prints, etc. Their words. ISP Forensic admitted that detectives removed everything from the bedrooms and then attempted to move it back according to photos before they even arrived, meaning the detectives completely destroyed the entire crime scene. They didn't test any of the drains or the washer and dryer. They ignored, disregarded all of the bathrooms. They allowed everyone and their mother to trample through the scene. The literal forensic team wasn't even wearing the correct protective gear the first day they were inside the house. They didn't start wearing the spacesuits until after the media showed them inside the house in normal clothes with their hair down and shit, and everyone was like, what the fuck are you doing? I could go on and on, but Cyree, if you see this, you're a joke. I say, I whenever I heart a comment, that lets everybody know that I read it, by the way. It doesn't mean that I necessarily have to agree with everything or disagree for that matter. I put this out on my channel a lot. When I heart your comment, it means I appreciate you and that you took the time to literally, because I saw it, and I'm appreciative. I don't care what your comment may be. You took the time to write something, right? It was influential enough for you to say, hey, I'm going to take my time to write something, right? I want people to know when I see it. Because whether I agree or not, I heart you commenting because it's important. And I don't delete comments if I think differently. Never once. It's a stupid thing. Like, I want to have the conversation. I delete comments if they're attacking of people, like ridiculously in the chat. Like, the fuck that has that? You bring nothing to it. And so Kaylee B has the right to say that she thinks Cyree is a joke. That's her opinion. So then she writes, because she's so hot about it, right? He writes, so these are all statements made by Cyree. In my nearly 30 years of working with and for prosecutors all over the U.S., I have never witnessed such a deliberate attempt by prosecutors to mislead the court on evidence in such plain sight. Anyone making such a claim would have to believe the court is incapable of reviewing physical evidence in possession of the state and defense. It rises to a level beyond a simple miscommunication or oversight and is clear and intentional misrepresentation in the hopes to conceal a much larger issue. I respectfully request the court give this affidavit the due attention it deserves and explore these issues further. And then, in quotes, there is no doubt Prosecutor Jennings knew or should have known AT&T timing advance data did exist in 2022. She was directly involved in the legal process obtaining it through the search warrant and was aware of work product created from it to further the investigation. The motion is a deliberate misrepresentation to the court to further conceal false statements used to obtain probable cause against the defendant and conceal exculpatory evidence from discovery, period, end quote. So was he lying then or is he lying now? That's where my frustration has lied from jump. That's why when Cy is like, oh, I'm still coming on your channel, I just need to go over to Custody Queens and set them straight with Turvey and all this shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? We want to set your affidavit straight. I don't give a fuck about Turvey. And why do you care about Turvey? Are you Turvey's keeper? I don't get it. Trust me. If you think I was going to be throwing Cyree softballs, you're out of your fucking mind. I just didn't press Cyree because I know that he's in an NDA. Why would I ever want any part of what the hell's going on with some supposed leak and criminal investigation, all this crazy stupid shit? I don't want no part of that shit. Yeah. You guys, that's why. Are you lying in this book or were you lying then? Because that affidavit just doesn't go away. It's just never going to go away. Not for me, at least not to me. Okay? Because I believe that affidavit is correct. Okay? It was scathing. It was scathing. Judge Hippler was so fucking hot over that affidavit. But my question is why write it like that? Why not get yourself the opportunity to be heard? Why write all of that if it wasn't for sensationalism? Why if you truly think about it, take a step back and why not write your affidavit a little bit differently? And that goes into what I said at the beginning of my show, which is Cy. Your book is about defending the investigative process. Or I'm sorry. Your book talks about the fact that you weren't defending Brian Kohlberger. You were defending the investigative process. Well, weren't you also defending our constitutional rights that were being trampled all over? You would agree your work would show that the FBI agents lied, correct? You would agree that prior to your affidavit, the prosecution and the FBI had this knowledge because they knew what they did, right? That you felt that way and they knew it, and you know your shit and you're involved. So everybody knows what's up here. They know what they did. I'm about to out what they did. So think about this. So with that knowledge that these corrupt motherfuckers have, you don't think for a second that maybe they decided to beat you at your own game before you had a chance to play the game? Because this is how much faith you want to put in these people, or that you don't want to like talk about people and just processes. Well, a couple chapters in there don't stick to that because they talk about Judge Hippler. They talk about a potential speculated Route B that has no evidence of ever happening, by the way. Like I cannot believe he wrote it in the book. Route B is forever going to be talked about this case forever. But my question is now think about it. Any judge seeing what you wrote, yeah, why not give this guy the floor and hear what he has to say? Don't you think that you would have gotten the floor if it was Judge? There's not a question in my mind that you would have had the fucking judge. You were going to be able to testify. But they kept you from testifying. And instead, Hippler comes out, and I personally believe that this was all set up to be able to flush this all out when they did, and you guys fell in the trap. Because I don't know why you guys were playing like this long game, because you could have moved in for a motion to dismiss, like, and put a bunch of things out there. It's not like you just do one motion to dismiss and added all this stuff. But knowing Hippler was going to blast you and your credit before the trial ever began, that was the purpose of this, right? Because that's what your book basically claims. Would that be coordination? Wouldn't that be coordination? And you're trying to say, in order for there to be, because I like the way you use the word coordination, you got to ask yourself a question is, don't ask who benefits it. Ask if something involves coordination. That's when you're talking about a conspiracy, okay? Well, I think it would involve much coordination for Ashley Jennings to have the ball sack to put it in writing and write a motion that she fucking wrote, wanting to fucking place a motion in limine on timing advance records for you guys to even inquire about them. That's some balls, man. Ashley Jennings threw her tits on that fucking table. Why? Why wouldn't Bill write that? He's about to retire. Ashley Jennings writes it. Knowing that they know what they did. Like, it's like you're playing cards and you're bluffing your hand, right? But here, like, you didn't fold your cards. And in fact, you went all in. You took your fucking hand and you pushed it all in. I'm all in. And you wrote what you wrote in that affidavit because you were all in, right? Nobody writes an affidavit like that and they're not all in. Especially knowing what just happened to you in Colorado. Okay? So boom, you push your chips in, you're all in. And so ready? So here, would you have pushed in all of your chips if you truly think about it, and knowing that Hitler has ruled against you guys in everything and stuff that it should never have been ruled against, right? What did you think was going to happen? That he's going to do the right thing? It's a human character flaw. How do you fix that? This man came out and literally blasted you and upended your career and your credibility, right? By what he wrote. But you say that you didn't have time to answer what the hell they wrote because they then changed whatever. That hearing wasn't till the 9th, March 28th to 9th. You didn't have time to write something to supplement your affidavit with what then they changed theirs, and to write that in there that they changed their argument. To not even be able to, because especially once he even denied you to testify and he made that decision earlier, you know, I would have been supplementing my affidavit immediately and giving that, and Ann Taylor could have filed it. Why didn't she? Because I get that you're saying I only addressed what they first said. I didn't address the next one. Well, why not? But think about this. You're going to tell me that this wasn't a coordinated effort because everybody under the sun knows that Ashley Jennings, Bill Thompson, they all fucking lied, and they're lying, right? And here the judge protected them by, here, I'm going to come out and do this. And while all eyes are watching. And you're going to sit here and say that there's no fucking coordination? Are you out of your fucking mind? They coordinated against you. You were coordinated against. There was coordination. There was cooperation. They played your fucking ass because they had to. Why? Because Brian Kohlberger walks. Right? Because there's no probable cause here because they lied about everything to get everything, right? And you come out with a book that is saying that there's no fucking bad actors here. That this is a systematic failure. This is a system that's not the people. The people here are good. Get the fuck out of here. You just said in your affidavit that these people are not good. So am I missing something here? Is there a chapter that I did not read that I was drunk while reading? That's the hardball question. That's what everybody wants to know in America. Nobody gives a fuck about any of this other fucking word salad. This is the question. Explain it. Talk about the 7 days. Did you have the timing advance records? Were you bluffing? Who the fuck is Boyd Jackson and why did you say his name? I was able to mention the Shanna Gardner case because I can give tips to whatever I want. I said, Mark Sonnendecker, they had timing advanced in Shanna Gardner's case in 2022, and they were using them, and that murder happened in February of 2022. Okay? If you needed a case, here, the ATF reports are out. Here's the 250 fucking pages. Like, could this help you with your quest with that? You get what I'm saying? Like, there's other cases that you can use that show here. It's pretty crazy. So knowing Hitler was going to blast you and your credit before the trial ever began, would that be coordination or just luck that Ashley Jennings would be so fucking lucky that Hitler is not going to be corrupt? Just like Brian Colbert is so lucky to miss every 10 fucking, all these cameras, just so lucky, but then decides to wrap around the house 4 fucking times. When it's so obvious that there was a light bulb camera there. And if he's paying attention to that stuff and he was stalking out that area and that house, there's no way that you missed that there was a light bulb camera there. And it wasn't like it was just new like a couple of days ago. And your book doesn't answer the 7-day question, does it? But that's why my follow-up to that is, how many geofences were set up in this case? And what's the protocol here? Because in the Shanna Gardner case, they set up these geofences all over, which then preserved all of these areas in any of the phones. But if somebody had shut off their device, what's the geofence do? So these are the things that everybody wants answered. And so Kaylee B is like, so was he lying then or is he lying now? My thing is why is your book saying, how can you only talk about Judge Hitler and not talk about Ashley Jennings, Bill Thompson, and then the AG's office that came in because they knew that if somebody was to do the right thing, Bill Thompson and Ashley Jennings should have been disqualified. This shouldn't have been able to be prosecuted by anybody in the Latah County prosecutor's office because they are witnesses in this case now. And they were witnesses right away. Bill Thompson going on a horde tour press on 11/28, 11/29, 11/30 of this case, talking about things like, if you knew what I knew, I would send my kids to this school. Well, Bill Thompson, what did you know on 11/28, 11/29, 11/30 when you did those interviews? You want to know what just had happened right before that? Oh, what had happened? What happened on 11/29? What did Curtis Whitman and Daniel Tanego do? What was that? That's what I fucking thought. You guys, these people are sick. They had the name Brian Kohlberger, and they all knew it way before December 1st. But they should ask, how? How? If you knew what I knew. Yeah. Unfortunately, when do people learn a lesson? When you reward your kid? When you reward little kids after they fuck around? That's when kids are learning? The fuck out of here. Why aren't we calling a spade a spade? How do you expect to learn when you don't make examples out of people? When you need to shine a spotlight on something, and that's what I mean by making an example out of it. Okay? Why are we protecting people that can't do their job? Dude, McDonald's, Burger King, you name it, the greeters at Walmart, they have higher fucking standards than these prosecutors do and these police officers do, clearly, because nobody's doing their job. Nobody. And this is murder cases. We're not talking about Fluffy missing and some bike that was stolen. Ugh. The discipline, go talk to the union, the police union. Go talk to the union. Make police officers have insurance. Just like doctors have malpractice insurance, police officers should be insured. When nobody will insure you anymore, then you don't have a job, right? Because we can't insure you. Places won't insure you. Let the police, let the counties or the local agencies pay those insurance premiums. And when they keep getting up and up and up and up and up, oh, you want to pay $5,000 a month to have this person on your staff? Why? Who would ever do such a thing? Because that person's such a fucking liability. Start doing that and let's see what happens so we can sue people, right? Just wear your body cam. Fill out reports. If you don't have your body cam on and you didn't fill out a report, you're not speaking on anything. Because it's fucking, what is it? I'm not going to do he said, she said. When people's lives are on the line, and then you, or if you're an attorney, then you better hit home with this with the jury. Why should you be forced to pick up for the slack that these people that you're paying a hell of a good salaries to just didn't do their job right, and now you as a jury have to come in here and hey, save our asses and still find him guilty. He really did do it. We just fucked up. What's Dean saying? I have no idea what Dean's saying. Dean, what's going on, Dean? What's up, Dean? Dean's like, Lana, you're being too nice about Cy in my eyes. Someone has got to him simple. No, nobody got to him. This is about, you guys, it's obvious here. If you read this book, read the chapter about the judge. Okay. What he says in this book about the judge is that he's basically admitting that your ruling, the Colorado, these rulings that y'all are doing, you're affecting people's livelihood, but you're also affecting our criminal justice system. Because somebody who would need my expertise to help them in a situation, because of your fucked up, because of what you try to say about me about being a conspiracy theorist, okay, made it so that now I can't possibly save somebody's life with this geolocation stuff that I do because they want to bring up the bullshit that you did. Think about it. How can Cy ever go and testify and there not be this cloud of doubt, which shouldn't be there, because Hitler should have never been able to say what he said, right? So this is my question, though. Cy, why protect the people that didn't protect you? You testify one time and this is what they did to you. Maybe the defendant isn't guilty. Think about the lengths that these people have gone and the lengths that there's this coordination. Fuck innocence or guilt. If something is right in front of you, we know right from wrong. Why aren't we asking the question? Why aren't these people just asked these questions? Ask them questions. Who do these judges? It's like a referee. You're there to ref the game, not determine the outcome, not be part of the game. These judges, because if you can separate Cy Ray's book from what happened in the Brian Kober case, I look at his methodology, and to me, this is common sense. This is exactly how you would run an investigation. This is exactly how you would do. Everything has to be validated independently. Like, duh. Just because someone says something to you doesn't make it fucking true. Just like Dylan and Bethany. Just because of what they said doesn't make it true. The really important question here is to ask Cy, when did he start working on his book? Was it before the Brian Kober case? Because this isn't just a discipline that started overnight. This isn't an AI book. Do I think there's a lot of word salad? Yes. Would I raise my hand in a class if I was a student back again and had this as my my textbook? I would criticize the shit out of some of this shit. Just to like say that this isn't necessary, but you're confusing the fuck out of people that would really try to want to learn this. This is not needed. But there is so much good but at the end of the day, a discipline and a methodology, it doesn't matter when you have shitbag fucking humans. Okay? Come up with a discipline that it can fucking sort out the shitbags. What can we do to fix that? How do we get rid of this bad character shit that's going on? Bad acting being protected. What kind of discipline can we do for that? Because the Brian Colbert case, in my opinion, is not the case that is saying if this methodology and discipline is used in the focus and this is how stuff has to happen. I'm telling you, it's no different than what we have now. People lied. People lied. Period. People lied. Ask them why. Because we're all human. Why can't you submit a report that corrects something that you saw that, holy shit, yeah, no, actually, that's not like I put 926 down here. We need to pop that back up here. That's not right. Especially like if you're using Excel and a log can get changed. I have yet to ever come across a case where somebody is writing up a report to make a correction to something else that they did. You're going to sit here and tell me that police officers are the only people in the world that don't make mistakes? They make so many mistakes. And yet nobody ever writes a report that they don't catch their own mistake. How would that look bad? It wouldn't look bad. How about teachers grading a paper? When you get your test back, did anybody ever used to check it and make sure that the teacher, they're grading how many? Think about, oh my God, I put an X here and it was right. Like Jesus. Think about when you're going out to eat and you get your receipt, you get your bill and it's like, wait a second, I didn't order this. There's just a mistake. They're going to correct it. I don't know. I just know that all eyes were on this case. And when all eyes were watching, this is what they did in front of us. So what the fuck do you think that they've been doing and continue to do and will do every single day when there's nobody watching? And that's what Jose Baez told us in the Shanna Gardner case. And we're going out here and we're doing our job here at Truth and Transparency. We go and get the material and then we bring it here and we present it. And so the biggest material that has been brought out on this channel over the past week single-handedly points to a huge fucking problem on the night of the murders to do with who was around that house, who was truly working, and what the fuck they were doing, because they're hiding it. You're going to sit here and tell me that Nate Rosendahl didn't get paid close to, I don't know, $500 on that night and he was just perfectly fine with that? You're telling me that all this grant money that they applied for so that they could get paid all this extra time because that's how you supplement your income? That's why when officers are like, they don't make that much. Fuck, you know how much money you can make if you want to work overtime and you can make a lot. Don't be a lazy fuck. You have awesome benefits. You have a retirement package when it's all said and done. And hopefully you're becoming a police officer or a prosecutor or a detective, right? Because you want to fucking make this place a better place and you want to make sure that it stays a good place and you want to take care of people. You want to help. And doesn't that give you some gratification too? But see, that takes a certain person. And so we need to start hiring better character people. But when you hire people that have bad character, the fuck do you think is going to happen? They have no morals. They have no values. They have no standards. When you don't have personal pride in and of yourself, and you care about the work that you do, or you care about being a good mom, or you care about being a good dad, or that, hey, I want to be able to give my kid everything that my parents did and then some. Hiring 19-year-olds to be police officers right out of school, what type of life experiences do they fucking have? Come on now. Start paying police officers and public defenders in those government positions. Start paying them more money, because honestly, it's where our taxpayer money is going right now. Pay them more money and have the more qualified people. Pay them better, just like I think we should be paying teachers better. They're with our kids 24/7. And make it be a job that would want to be sought out. We'll just take anybody over there. But who wants to do these jobs? They're putting themselves in the line every single day. They could be killed in line of duty. You don't think that you should be paid well for that? I think that you should be paid extraordinarily well for that. $8 million. $8 million. How about this? Why don't we stop paying lawyers and shit like $200, $300, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 an hour? Hey, guess what, humans? Do you want to know that we could put out lawyers out of business if we all boycotted and just started representing ourselves pro se? These lawyers asking for this astronomical amount of money per hour, $1,500 an hour for fucking what? You want to fuck? Are you a hoe? $1,500 for what? What are you doing? I'm just really curious. $1,500 an hour. That's insane. To do what? I just want to know to do what? To type me up an email that responds to my email that I had a question about? That took you, 6 minutes? But it's at a rate of $1,500 an hour? So it's that? I would just love to see a little bit of a shutdown. Represent yourself pro se in all these civil shit. Let's go. These lawyers would be freaking the fuck out. Okay. Freaking out. Freaking. Litigation is when a lawyer is worth anything. If you're not litigating, sorry. I'm not paying you to type up some shit that I can do. I'll do the work. You can look it over. Yeah. Stop giving people passes, but the book, in my opinion, is just so contradicting at different times, and that's the biggest part of the review that I think I have, is that I can't take it serious when one of the things is not the fact that there's going to be bad actors. And there's just one sentence in the book where it talks about the fact that, this book assumes, it says this book assumes, when you get to rules 6 and 7 of this methodology, that up to like 6 and 7, this book assumes that we are not dealing with bad actors. And it's just like, dude. So you would agree then, if you got bad characters, bad actors, it don't matter what motherfucking discipline you're in. You got a bad actor, and then it's like, and I know he's going to have to say yes to that. I already know the answer before I ask the question. But that's the follow-up to that then. It's the follow-up that says, in your affidavit called out the bad actors, but then in the book, it rewarded them by saying, you guys, it's not your fault. This is why this happened. It happened because the case was moving so fast and you guys couldn't handle the pressure and da-da-da. And if you guys would just do this methodology, this would never happen. And I'm just like, no, the Brian Colbert case would have still happened even if they employed your methodology because of the people that would have been employing the discipline. They were bad actors. And so I just personally think that this book would sell way more if it's about the Brian Colbert case, which you're using as the example, than let's say a case that we don't know about. And that's the price of, and I get it, but to say that we can't ask questions or we should, or that, Bethany and Dylan are victims, I'm not saying that they're not victims, but they are also witnesses. They're witnesses. And whether or not they move out of being a witness and into some other category, that comes from interviews, that comes from the information that's gleaned from the investigation. Why are there two people that did not die in that house? These are all questions. Why did they wait all that time? What were they doing in that house? But we're not going to rewrite history because I know what was said to me. I know that there's bad actors, but the book just says that there's not. And I just disagree. I disagree with that message. I think that you could have come across in this book to hold your own and to say basically who would ever want to be a defense expert when this is what would happen to you to be one. A couple of the people that I talked to in the digital forensic world, do you know how many classes that are only offered to law enforcement people versus that if a independent, somebody who more or less is testifying as an expert that's not with law enforcement, but they're in the same field, right? There are so many more training available. Like when I say so much more for if you're involved with law enforcement that you can't even go to if you're not. And so if you think about it, how can that be fair for us as we're the people that are one day going to be, a defendant, could potentially be a defendant. And think about it. Why are we allowing that the only people that are getting trained for certain material is cops? Because they're never going to be on our side. That's pretty fucked up when you think about it in a big picture like that. And that this was just a recent conversation that I had, and I didn't know this. I didn't know that a lot of the training stuff was excluding people that would want to go to this, but they're not allowed to go. It's pretty crazy. All right. On that note, I'm probably going to I want to rest my voice a little bit. William Tardy, thank you so much. Bluebird, love you, but you get up too early. Summer sleeping. That's okay. You catch it on the replay. Happy 4th to the bombshell with brains. Thank you so much. Moon, what's good? What's good? A ton of memberships were given away today. Thank you so much. Karen, you're awesome. William Tardy, spray in the chat. I want to say thank you guys. Why is Cy got to put things right on the custody queens for who? Ann Taylor. No, he's putting he wants to go on there to set the record straight with what Brent Turby said. It has nothing to do with Ann Taylor. Once you see this book and you read this book, you're going to see why Cy feels the need to do what he is about to do. It's because his book is completely opposite of what Brent Turby is saying. Brent Turby believes that there's hella bad actors. The crime scene is a joke. Okay, the crime scene says something else. That there's multiple people involved in this. And that, yeah, if you want to say Brian Kohlberger is involved, well, he didn't do this alone. That there was a cleanup. Okay. There's tons of chain of custody issues. And the first couple sentences of this book, as I've said, is the complete opposite. We're talking about a pristine, that this crime scene was processed. It was a pristine crime scene. And I'm just like, wait, what? I'm just like, there's no fucking way you're writing that. And I'm not making it up, you know? Where's page 43? If you look at page 43, the Kohlberger evidence, or the Kohlberger investigation, had evidence. What it lacked was the structure to govern what the evidence was allowed to mean. And in that absence, narrative arrived before discipline ever could. And I'm just like, no, there was definitely a narrative. There's definitely a narrative. But Brian Kohlberger can be the person who committed these murders. He can be. What Cyree is going to explain to you guys is that what he believes doesn't mean that that's how he would find it in a courtroom if he was a juror. What he believes, whether he's guilty, innocent, what he believes means nothing. Okay. It's what can the evidence prove beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And that's left for a jury to decide. What evidence comes into that courtroom, that's up to the judge, right? And so what does the evidence say? Does it prove the state's case? And the answer is no, because the state is saying that Brian Kohlberger came in a white car and went along 270 and did this and did that and did this and did that. And Cyree can 1000% prove that that didn't happen. That there's no evidence of that. And in fact, the car was going the other way. Okay. He was back on his home tower at 2:54 in 54 seconds when that phone was shut off. And then poof, gone until it comes back on at 4:48. And there is no evidence that puts him in Moscow during the time of the crimes. And one of my questions would be is, well, if this crime happened and started at 2:53, okay, could Brian Kohlberger be the person that started that crime? Could you definitively say that he was not that person then? And I think he would say yes to that, because at 2:54, he's on this tower and then somebody's making a command on his phone to power it down. And they did that in Washington, right? Yeah. Okay. And so if this crime started at 2:53, when basically Maddie and Kaylee no longer have any movement on their phone, I don't believe that two girls would just fall asleep at the same time, right? Would that normally happen? What's their pattern of life behavior? Do you see that on their phones when they just are shotgunning calls? Do you ever see them then that they just go from shotgunning calls to not surfing the net then? Maybe playing a movie? Did that happen that night? But it normally does, right? So what's putting the crime occurring at a certain time? There's no 911 call, right? Or somebody called 911 because they saw something, right? No, not till when? Noon. What type of questions would you have been asked on the stand? But he says it right here. Brian Kohlberger can be the person who committed these murders. Inaccuracies, exclusions, or interpretive instability in a probable cause affidavit do not exonerate a suspect, resolve culpability, or substitute for trial. The issue is structural, and it begins with what was available and what was never required to matter. The AT&T call detail records available at the time did not support that interpretation, which was that in the probable cause that the phone was shut off at 2:47, and they knew it. So they made a knowing false statement in a probable cause evidence. And what would that do? That would suppress the evidence, would it not? So that means that they could not use it at trial, right? They would not be able to talk about the fact that his phone never shut off at any time or, was out of the service area. Wouldn't that like toss all of that? It should have. You should have never been able to get, I said, well, and then wouldn't have tossed the DNA. Because everything, what the fuck are we dealing with here? And then he's trying to say that those 7 minutes and 45 seconds are documented in AT&T records when nothing in the process requires the full record to be honored. What do you mean? Yes, it does. Everything in our process requires the full record to be honored. Those people determined on their own that we're going to act like the record ends at 2:47, Cy. Honesty, integrity, corruption, not being corrupt. That's our system. They didn't make an error here. They knew it, right? Nick Balance does not possibly make this mistake. Fuck, he's testified in the Lori Daybell case, Chad Daybell case. But to sit here and say that when nothing in the process requires the full record to be honored before any part of it is used, extraction becomes selective without ever feeling selective. What the fuck does that mean? Why don't you just break that down for us? Just simply put, you're taking that selection and just entering it into the probable cause, but the other selection exists. That's called omission. You omitted material. Very, very important material to this case. For the purpose to what? Obtain information on somebody that you would not have got. Because they felt the need that they needed to omit it on a purpose because they knew that they wouldn't get the warrant. They would not get there was no probable cause. No judge is going to sign off on this. He isn't moving in concert with a phone and car to Moscow. He's at and on his home tower at 254. That's the omission. The way that Cy tries to work around it in this book comes across as disingenuous. And anybody that reads this book and who knows this case knows that that's not how it happened. Like, he's trying to make it seem like these weren't people that were making these conscious decisions to do this. And I have no idea why he wanted to go that route with it. People can say it was to sell books. I don't think it was to sell books. Maybe he wants people to read it and be like, why is this guy? It's like almost like a read between the lines type thing. Wow, this guy doesn't want to call out these people, but basically he's calling out these people. And I just don't. That's this my channel is Truth and Transparency. I don't need to fucking write something like that and say that I'm gonna read between the lines. That just makes no sense to me. I'm going to be transparent. Here it is. But I'm going to tell you what, you're going to have to read chapters over and over to understand them. And so in that sense, I'm like, it's like every other college textbook that you ever had. So, but I think regardless, the chapters that don't have you read between the lines is the one that only pertains to him. And that's the judge in this case. And so it's interesting that he had no problem writing the exact thing that he wanted to say about the judge in this case. There was no reading between any lines with that chapter. But I think it's a lot of word salad. Anyways, it's just my opinion. Doesn't mean I don't love the guy. Doesn't mean I don't think the world of him and his wife. I think that he got screwed. I think we got screwed the day that Judge Hilper thought that he could behave the way that he did. But it doesn't look good for Cy, in my opinion, the way that you would come out and then write a book like this and say there were no bad actors in this case. There were a ton of bad actors, and a book calling it out would have, I think, I mean, keep your integrity, keep what you said, and own it, and say, I welcome anybody to write a book saying that what I've presented, I lived the case, I saw the evidence, and then lay it all out there. Put the evidence out there, especially if it meant that you're going to be able to back up your claims. Here, this is what I was not allowed to do in that trial, that here it is. So, Don't Be Hate says, how do you call them out in court docs and infer wrongdoing and corruption and then protect corrupt in the book? Did he get threatened enough to join the narrative? And so how can any of us fight it? Oh, I don't think that, no. Do I think that he was threatened? Absolutely not. No, I don't. I think Cy works in interesting ways, and he's making his moves, and this is the way that he wants to do it for whatever the heck, But I don't think this book was by, it was there was thought. Also, if he's in an NDA, how did he get around not breaking the NDA by, doing this book? His name is on the book. The Brian Kohlberger case was used. And I think it has everything to do with the fact that it's a textbook. So maybe he's smart how he went about not breaking an NDA, because nobody out. I mean, he came out and said his stuff with his name. He didn't go with some author and that's what they're alleging, that basically Brent Turvey and Chris Holland, and they're basically the ghostwriters for Chris Wickham's book. So, okay, is the book worth 90? If I think the book is worth the money, if you followed this case, how much time have you guys put into the case? $90, and this is because I think it's only worth it to people that have been following the Brian Kohlberger case for that amount of time, that I would say set aside $20 a week for the next month, then buy the book. I think it's worth setting aside $20 a week. I mean, I'm going to go over the book. I'm going to honor Cy's, request in this, and that, like, the way that it would be told is how I did it with my stuff. Is I've been taking really copious amounts of notes that have to do with the case, and I'm cross-referencing with other things that have gone on in the case. So if you can't afford to buy the book, when I'm doing my book review of this book, come out and just join that. Is it a picture book? No, they got some diagrams in it. You guys, it's really like a textbook, because it's teaching. It wants to walk you through, the methodology of behavioral fusion, because it's the first discipline where we have the opportunity with cell phones now, that someone's pattern of life, you can get that from someone's cell phone, and it's going to be it's being an integral part of investigations, and to go about preserving all that data, and that you actually need more data to do that, and it protects both the defendant and the both sides. But it's all about the preserving the data. These search warrants that just automatically give you, just because you get my phone and you just think that you get everything in it. No, there should be a certain search warrant for everything that you want out of here individually. Okay. You can go seize my phone, right? Make an image of it, but you should not be able to just get into my phone and have fucking carte blanche to just go through all the different compartments of it. Your phone has all that. So I think that you need to write up a search warrant and saying what you're looking for, because when you say, oh, I believe that the crime of murder is in my phone, what the fuck is that? And that these judges are just like, yeah, that's great. Yeah, here, sign away. The evidence of murder is in my phone. Come on. Thanks. Those days need to go. Okay. And maybe some of these fucking, defense attorneys need to become judges. Okay. But that is that's a joke. That you just get to get in my phone and you get to write, because you said that the evidence of murder is going to be in my phone. How about this? I didn't bring my phone with me to go commit a crime, right? You know that my phone was not in the geofence, right? I didn't bring it with me. And in fact, my phone stayed actually at home. How should you be able to how is there going to be evidence of murder in my phone that was not with a person during the time of the crime? I'm telling you, people are going to stop with these. I know I've already done it. I've went out and bought 2 flip phones, and I have my Apple. My Apple does not leave my house. You want my flip phone? Here you go. That ain't going to tell you dick. Here you go. Why, Lynn, are you a criminal? No, I just believe that, take back the power, people. Be smarter than these fucking idiots. You want to take away my privacy? No, I'm going to actually keep my privacy watch. Now I'm going to show you how to do that. I don't need the fucking internet when I'm driving in my car. I want a phone for safety purposes. If, God forbid, an accident or something like that. But to think that you can place me at a crime and do all this and blah, 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 and go into my phone and get into my Facebook, and why? What the fuck does that? How are you going to get it? How? That shit needs to just stop. How is there evidence of murder in my Facebook messages? You think I was telling people that I committed murder through my text messages? Then write that shit out. Say that's what you believe. Write that I was communicating with so-and-so and so-and-so. But for you just to say that a phone has evidence of murder is a joke to me, and those search warrants should not be permitted. You should have to build up, and that's something that Cyree talks about here, is that there was a 3 warrant process that he believed in doing, X, Y, and Z. You guys do know now that geofence warrants, bye-bye. They're unconstitutional. The ruling just happened a couple days ago. I really want to talk about that. So that's probably what I'll talk about on my next. GPS can be removed. Yeah. You can do a lot of things. You can do a lot of things to make it so that your phone is not reporting to anything. When I talked to Cyree and he explained to me about a couple of things I never thought about how my phone can interact. And the one thing that we talked about was, you pull out of your driveway and you have the little Wi-Fi button that's on your phone, right? My phone, anybody that has Wi-Fi, all my neighbors, it would be this secondary touch or whatever, just because I'm driving by. And that's why I'm laughing when they want to talk about Brian Kober and this whole, he never was on Mad Greek's Wi-Fi ever, not fucking once. Never once. In this background stuff about you driving around, and if you have, your Wi-Fi on, that there could be where stuff would pop up. When you go into certain areas, you start getting push notifications. If you're talking about pantyhose, next thing I know, I am getting, no joke, pop-ups and ads about pantyhose. I mean, That's crazy. And so to think that they can just start saying that your phone is basically how you're thinking, it's like, no, your phone is monitoring you. It's recording you. It knows what you like, it says. Well, no, I'm reading a document. You know what's crazy? I'm reading a document that has to do with some case. That isn't what I like. That's my job. Right? I'm reading about stupid shit. Like, oh God, here, this is funny. Yesterday, okay. Bella's like, we like to read what people post on the Neighbor app on when people are having like, I don't know. Because people, it's like going to Walmart, okay? You can just go to these apps, and when people are posting stuff, yesterday, I'm going to read it, guys. I posted it yesterday, okay? Because yeah, the pantyhose came up because we're like, do people even wear pantyhose anymore? Do they even call it pantyhose anymore? Does pantyhose, is it Panti? You know, we were laughing about pantyhose, and we're like, who ever named pantyhose that way? You know, like, and then you're such a hoe, you know? And so this is where our brains go. That's how pantyhose came up, by the way. But we go on this app, it's called Neighbor. And I posted it the other day. I think it was yesterday that I posted it, and I was dying. I was like, you got to see this. And I was like, what? Why? Like, she was losing it, and I started losing it. And I'm like, what app are you on? And she's like, it's the Neighbor app, because we wanted to get flag notifications if anything ever comes reported from the Columbus chief in the McKee case. So we went on to like all the different type of apps to like get all these notifications going with the McKee case. Well, we get this notification yesterday, and it was the Columbus police chief commenting on the fact that people need to be watching their kids. It's summertime, and you know, I get it. It's a little hot outside. People might not want to have so many articles of clothing on when they're sunbathing. They have this right if they're in their own, at their home, in their backyard. And I'm like, are people just fucking laying out naked or something? Like, I'm trying to understand what's going on. And so here's the message. So this is what led to our discovery of this message yesterday. It says, "Dear neighbors, I have a huge favor to ask. Before I ask, I already realize that our city has a noise ordinance and also an indecent exposure laws, but no, I am elderly. The favor is, if you see or hear me out mowing my grass at 2 a.m. in a pair of boxers, please let's not get the CPD involved. Just turn off your security cameras, turn your head, and look the other way. And please don't use your phone to record me, because nobody needs to see all this. Just mind your own business." It's been hotter than hell here. So like if you cut your grass, it's like 95 degrees outside. Dude, so here's me. Because I got to get all up in this shit. I am dying. He's like, nobody, just mind your business. Nobody needs to see all that. Then he says, for God's sakes, I am old and it's hot as hell out there. Thanks in advance for understanding. Okay. I comment and I say, this deserves a GoFundMe, because we should raise money for this man just so he can get those little electric new lawnmowers. Okay. So this way you will bypass the noise ordinance, right? At 2 a.m. And that's the only thing you got to worry about besides your neighbors if they want to, record you in your boxers. But I said, let's have some fun with it. And I think that you should be in a naked suit. Like, just put a whole thing put pantyhose all over you. Like, just like the netted fish outfit. That should be enough, but it's all breezy. And so whoever posted that, I mean, it said the name, but I wanted to prevent that. But I was dead. Just mind your business, guys. I just need to cut my grass. It's so long. I need to do this at 2 a.m. when it's only like 85 versus 95 to 100, and all this humidity. Just shut off your security cameras. Just don't get the CPD involved. Just don't call for me on noise complaints. Fucking dead when he said, because obviously big noise complaint person here with this case. He's like, I know there's noise ordinance. Just come on, man. Nobody needs to be getting the CPD involved, and just dead. So wanted to share that with you guys. I would never, if I heard somebody cutting their grass in the middle of the night right now, I could not be mad at them. I just couldn't, because it makes sense. It's common sense. Like, dude, it is so fucking hot here right now. I get it. And how you could be a motherfucker to them, knowing that you know how hot it is. Like, come on, respect the game. I would be peeking outside to see how they're cutting the grass and actually seeing the grass because it's so dark. He's probably going to put some flashlights, on top of that mower. Like, man, come on. But I thought it was great. So I had to share it. I share it to all of you guys in the post section. So, is Birdie live? Is Birdie taking calls? Okay, hold on. Okay, here we're gonna call Birdie's. We're gonna call Birdie's live right now, and ask a question. What should we ask him? Okay. Well, we should prank him. Let's prank him. What do you think? You know what? We're gonna tell him that there was a new drop. That Hitler went in on July 3rd when he didn't need to, and he just released a whole bunch of new docs. You might want to hurry up and go grab them before they're off the internet. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Being told or shown right about the about all of the undercover police work that night, whether they're trying to hide it or they're not. And speak of the devil, Lana did pop up backstage, so that'll be very interesting to hear Lana's thoughts on this. But E-Potty, I mean, so are you under the impression that it could be just a completely different night and that, okay.
Yes, and I want to shout out to OMP. Another reason why I think maybe the Grub Truck video is a different night is the girl who...
Just so you know, I don't agree with this caller.
WSU or in Pullman shows up at the Grub Truck with the same pants.
We do that all the time in college.
It's checkered. It's so easy to find. It's checkered black and white pants, big black burly coat. And I was like, was that staged?
Do you guys ever laugh at some of these theories?
I just saw Miss B with the BS, who's also backstage, and I got the video of the same sweater, but it looks like the girl's pants and shoes. Okay. That's crazy.
Maybe she doesn't have any money.
I wanted to say, and I'll jump up because I want to hear Lana too.
Oh God, you guys don't want to hear this.
Charlie did the picture of the books in the bookcase. If he had just gone to the photo,
now I'm gonna have to be serious.
The drawer that's open.
Kaylee B, we just talked all about you, girl.
I think it's the only book in there. It's called Walls of Secrecy.
No, he doesn't think that. He doesn't think that. No, Kaylee B, I promise you, he knows that everybody's dead.
They actually teach this in Washington State University, and the officers, I guess law enforcement, are taught this as what not to do in an investigation. And I'm wondering is it one, why was that?
You were, yeah, in a good way. I talked about your Substack. I was telling people to go check out your Substack.
That'd be an interesting read.
Yeah, check out the right at the beginning of the episode.
What all lines up.
It's good.
Anyway, that's what I got, Birdie.
Well, I appreciate it, E-Potty, and I hope you have an awesome 4th.
You too.
Was that Jesse?
All right, cheers. All right. Lana, if you could hear this, just so you know, I got 2 more calls that people have been waiting. But Lana, I will finish with you. So don't go anywhere.
Oh, you want me to
Looking forward
wait,
hearing from you,
motherfucker?
but we got Mystery with the BS and Phoenix Rising, and then we're going to pop it.
Oh, okay. You want me to just wait?
Finish this Friday stream off.
Okay, we'll end
What's
this
up,
shit.
Mystery with the BS? How you doing?
We're just gonna sit here and live stream your stream.
Bueller? Oh, okay. All right. What's going on? How you doing?
We can't hear her.
Yes, but it's kind of broken up.
What? We can't even hear her.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Birdie what he's grilling out for.
Okay, we got Phoenix Rising. How are you doing, Phoenix Rising?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hello. First, I want to give a big shout out to you and Mrs. Birdie. Congratulations on the baby on the way.
Thank you
Super
so much.
excited. I have a few different things I want to mention. So first, I want to go back to the very first call, with the guy who drugged his wife. I don't know what this whole
The guy that drugged
thing
his
is,
wife.
going back to Scott Peterson,
Oh.
Chris Watts, which I followed immensely, and I still think Nicole is guilty too. But it's like nobody believes in divorce anymore. It's really, really bizarre. So I just wanted to mention that.
That is isn't that just such a weird thought process to think about?
Like, how is that their only solution? I mean, yeah, paying child support that it may not want to do, but you know what? It's not forever.
Oh my God.
And it's not that much.
It's sickening. I just can't understand. And if they don't want to have these children, then why are they getting them pregnant? That's my first thing. Because it's really, these poor children, they're dying too, whether they're born yet or if they're in the belly, they're still a human being. But anyway, regarding the Idaho4, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Not at all.
Okay, cool. So first of all, I agree with one of your callers that said that the screams, I really believe that those screams, that was fear and terror. Like, there is not anybody that's going to convince me that had nothing to do with the case. I've been to parties. I'm 50, but when I was younger, I partied. And if I had ever heard a noise like that, I would have immediately called the police without even telling anybody, So that's the other thing with that. And, and the other thing I do need to say, and I think a lot of people agree with this, if the police showed up and these were 2 male roommates, they would have been locked up, I think, right away. What do you think on that?
So I've been asked this a couple times, and I've just said I'd love to have seen like a crystal ball and just look at the 2 different scenarios. I certainly think that so naturally, I think that the behavior of the cop and the interaction is going to be much different, right? I don't know if somebody's going to be as crying, hyperventilating, right? Not saying that a guy can't be worked up. They absolutely could be. But I just think that initially the guard of the cops would have been up a lot more. And I personally believe there would have been a true detainment.
Absolutely. And the other thing,
You're gonna are you serious?
Talking about Dylan, but to me, Bethany's silence is so loud.
Okay.
I really think that she's more involved with it too. I think that, I'm going to be honest, and I don't mean to sound rude, but Dylan, I think she's just super emotional. And I do think that both her and Bethany knew who did what, happened. I'm not saying that they did the murders, but I do think that they knew, and that's why they were not killed. So that's another thing with that. And what about those photos of Quinn Kelly and Dylan with the mask on? How come nobody finds that weird? Like, to me, that would have been like, wait a minute.
It's very weird. It is very weird that the surviving roommate has this certain facial expression with a giant, the Jackhawk 9000 that you get at Walmart. You know what I mean? It's just like that wild knife.
This whole case is just completely insane. And then, then we have the whole other thing where they didn't identify all of the DNA. They said that there was male DNA they couldn't identify. And I know that there's rumors that Dylan may be a man, and there is a possibility. And I'm not saying that gay people are anything, but that I thought was kind of strange. But Mr. Car Accident Guy, I think he's probably the most likely.
We're still talking about Dylan might be a man? Oh, shit.
The damage that he had on him was not one of someone who had been in a car accident, basically. And so that's another thing. I think that he could definitely be part of it. And as far as Brian Koberger's concerned, I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks maybe he's a Fed. I don't know. He's super smart. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I have a daughter who is high functioning autism too. And she's 21. And, people talked about, oh, he had no reaction in court, this and that. But when you are autistic, it doesn't mean that you're stupid. You could be brilliant. But your reactions to things are not the typical of most people. Like even with my daughter, when she was younger, instead of having a tantrum, if she was upset, she would mute. Like she just wouldn't talk. So I think when someone hasn't been around someone who's autistic, it's kind of hard for people, I guess, to relate, and it's not their fault. But I see a lot of the autistic type of behaviors in him in that courtroom. I don't think that he was just being cold. I don't even think he did it. But I also want people to understand that when you're autistic, you don't have the typical reactions that most of us would have. And I think, honestly, the reason he took the plea was because he didn't want to get shot to death. I know I wouldn't want to go against a shooting squad, just personally. So that's another, you know what I mean?
Well, I think I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
I was just going to talk about.
I mean, how is prison in life for the rest of your life not death?
And I think
To think that I have to go to prison for the rest of my life. Like if I did it, just fucking put me out of my misery. Bring on the firing squad. Like, I don't know.
A lot of people do pick up on it. However, I point out more so just
Malaysia 370 explained.
Not moving or reacting.
I followed the Malaysia 370 case for a long time.
It's just completely bizarre. And the fact that Brian hasn't said anything, like nothing. We have not heard one thing. There's no, what did they say, that they lost or something, his interview after everything? Everything about this case is strange. And then on to the families of the victims. And I'm almost done here.
No, you're good.
But this is what makes everything really shady to me too. Especially with Kaylee's parents. They've been so angry with these, with people like us who are following this and trying to figure out what really happened. And I think about my daughter, she's in college, and I think if this happens,
okay. Sorry, Birdie, I gotta go, man. It's fucking July 3rd. I gotta go get my titties wet. Birdie. Birdie, I love you. Let's do a live. I'm game. I'm game tonight. Fireworks. Actually, it's probably gonna be loud. Okay. I love him to death too. Sorry, buddy. I don't want to cut off Phoenix, right? I mean, everybody waits their turn, and that's why when I had my 2-minute rule, it was so I could literally get through a bunch of people. That was what I wanted. I wanted everybody to have a chance, and I think I'm gonna start putting up a timer now because I want to do a debate. I'm gonna start putting up 2 people and debate. Boom, here's a topic. What do you have to say? Okay, your minute's up. What do you have to say? Okay, your minute's up. And then I have a minute, and then, bye. So something like that. He's probably like, why'd you leave? It's just better. It's just better this way, Birdie. Oh my God. Are Katie Holmes and Joshua Jackson dating? No way. You waited for me? Joshua Jackson and Katie Holmes finally reveal how they reunited after 25 years.
I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit because then she creates this beautiful space for the two of us to be able to come back and work together.
Oh. Why don't they just date? Oh, the Tribeca Festival. How Holmes revealed how she reached out to Jackson for the movie. The pair who briefly dated while co-starring in Dawson's Creek have once again sparked romance rumors. Yes, I love it. Hell yeah. Birdie said, can't do a live tonight. Oh man, okay. Oh my God. That's great news. That's when Katie Holmes was actually fucking normal and not with fucking Tom Cruise and some weird shit. Okay. Awesome. Just getting my up to date on my e-news. What is this? Why are people saying that the Banfield is not the night of the murders? Bless everybody. You guys, we have the CAD on that. You cannot make up the CAD. I just wish that people would that's ridiculous to say that. Okay. If you want to make claims like that, go get documents and you can go into the back end and you can see if any of this type of stuff was manipulated. You could pull records and see if any of this stuff had some manual inputs. But until you go and get something like this to then show that they're like, look at this, blah, blah, blah. Like, why would anybody be talking about that the Banfield dudes is not the same night of the murders? I can't. I just fucking can't. Like, making up something like that is absolutely not even. The only way that you could claim that is to go and put the work in. Go and ask for. You cannot manipulate a CAD, but if you do, it's going to be in the back end, and you can see if there's been manual manipulation. But you have to go and get the document. You have to ask for it. You have to request it. I just can't fucking handle this shit. No. So I did not watch Harsh's video about that. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. Okay, this is where everybody should put their time in. Everybody should put their time into this. This needs to be explained. Okay, what happened the night of the murders, and with the grant shit needs to be explained. And it requires actually when you're off camera to put in the time to properly seek out the agency, request the material, and ask these questions and get confirmation, get their responses, and to do these FOIA requests and to get these all these MPD / Idaho State Police interviews and to see where this case was truly sending people, because none of these interviews so far have revealed the goddamn thing. Right? That's what I have to say about that. Harsh. Oh, he covers everything at least. Yeah. Well, it's just, unless you have documentation, like how I just described it, I wouldn't even be talking about that because it's propaganda. Have a great 4th of July. We might be back late night. I haven't made that decision. Go spend time with your families. Don't blow off your hands. Don't blow off your dicks. And keep throwing your tits up on the dicks. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care. Thank you so much. Much love. Much appreciation.